At 6:47 a.m., her door explodes open. By 7 o'clock, she's in handcuffs. By noon, her entire life is gone. Framed for a brutal hit and run, every piece of evidence points to her, except one thing: she's innocent. But the real twist: the mastermind behind it all knows her better than anyone. This is a high stakes game of truth, deception, and revenge.
At 6:47 in the morning, my front door basically exploded. An officer shouted, "Hands up!" while two guns pointed directly at me. I was being arrested for a hit and run, an accusation that would ruin my life. Far away, my family was probably celebrating. They thought their 90-day plan had worked and I was going to prison for my sister's crime. The cold handcuffs bit into my skin, but they missed one tiny, crucial detail, and that detail was about to demolish their entire scheme. I'm really glad you decided to listen to this. I want to ask you something. Where are you from? And if your own sister framed you, what would you feel? Would it be disbelief, rage, or just shock? Tell me below in the comments. Please remember, this story has fictional parts for dramatic purposes. Any familiar names or places are just a coincidence. But the lesson on how to handle a toxic family is very real. Let us start. Officer Stevens did not bother to knock. My apartment door shook from three heavy bangs at exactly 6:47 in the morning. That was not a delivery person. That was the sound of someone who does not need permission to enter. I was pouring coffee when my whole world fell apart. The coffee pot just froze in my hand. Outside my window, the rainy street was still dark. The Austin skyline was just a shadow in the fog. It was the Austin police. My hand was shaking and coffee spilled on the counter. I put the pot down. My heart started to race inside my chest. I was just wearing an old University of Texas shirt and pajama bottoms. My bare feet made no sound on the wood floor as I walked to the door. I was able to shout, "I am on my way." The moment I put my hand on the knob, the door flew inward. Three officers rushed into my living space. Two Glock 22 pistols were aimed at my chest. Hands where I can see them. I quickly put my hands up with my palms out. The main officer was young, maybe 30, with a short haircut and a serious face. His name tag said Stevens. Behind him, the other two officers searched the room. They held their weapons up, ready for a fight. "Are you Reagan Sutton?" Stevens' voice was like ice. "Yes." "What is going on?" "You are under arrest for attempted murder." The words did not make any sense. Attempted murder. It was as if he was speaking another language. I felt like I was trapped in a terrible dream. "What? That is a mistake. I have not." "Turn around. Put your hands behind your back." Stevens gave me no chance to think. He grabbed my arm, pushed me against the counter, and forced my arms behind me. The cold metal stung my wrists. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was incredibly loud in my apartment. "You have the right to remain silent." Stevens's warm breath was on my neck. "Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand?" "Yes, but I am innocent." "What attempted murder? I did not leave my apartment." "Tell it to the detective." He grabbed my arm and led me to the open door. My neighbors were all looking out. Mrs. Miller from apartment 4B covered her mouth with her hand. Marcus from across the way was recording me with his phone. It was a humiliating parade of shame. I was being judged by everyone before I was even charged. Stevens led me down the hall, past the broken elevator, and into the stairwell. My bare feet felt the cold, rough concrete as we walked down 3 floors. I tried to notice everything: Stevens's strong hold on my arm, the flashing red light on his partner's camera, the way they acted like I was some kind of threat. That thought made me shiver. We came out into the parking garage. A police car was there, its engine running in the damp air. Stevens opened the back door for me. A thick wire screen separated the front and back seats. He pushed my head down as I got in. The door slammed shut with a loud final noise. I was now locked in a police car. The hard plastic seat was terrible. The handcuffs were digging into my wrists and my shoulders hurt already. Through the screen, I saw Stevens speaking into his radio. "The suspect is with us. We are going to the main station." A suspect. That is what I was now. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe slowly. Attempted murder. Who? When? Where? I was home the whole night. I had a video meeting at 10 o'clock at night with some clients in Singapore. I watched a movie on Netflix. I fell asleep right there on my couch. I woke up at 6:30 and made some coffee. There was no missing time, no gaps in my memory. This meant one of two things. Either it was a huge mistake or someone set me up. Stevens started the car. The other two officers followed in another vehicle. I could see the garage door opening to a gray morning. The city of Austin was just waking up. Some people were running by the river. A food truck was opening for business. A man was out with his dog. Life looked so normal, but in this car, my own life was being destroyed. We turned onto Cesar Chavez Street and headed toward downtown. I saw my apartment building shrink in the side mirror. All of my proof was in there: my computer, my phone, the documents that would show I was innocent. They would not even let me grab my purse. My mind was racing. You do not get arrested for a crime like this without a victim. Someone was injured, and the police thought it was me. As I stared at the morning skyline, one clear thought came through all the noise. Whoever planned this made a very big mistake. They believe that I am weak. They are about to discover how wrong they are. They have no clue what I am capable of. They do not know my job. I work in cybersecurity. I am an expert at solving problems. I discover the weaknesses in very secure computer networks. I can follow the digital trails that people think are gone forever, and I will discover who is trying to ruin my life. Our car got on the Interstate 35 highway where the traffic was getting heavy. The police radio was full of codes and words I did not know. I saw my own reflection in the side window. My hair was a mess. I had on my old University of Texas shirt and the handcuffs were shining. I appeared to be the criminal they wanted, but I am not a criminal. I went over the details one more time. Last night there was a 9 o'clock video meeting. I can prove this with recordings and digital timestamps. My clients from Singapore can be my witnesses. At 10 o'clock, I was watching Netflix. I fell asleep. I got up at 6:30. My alibi was perfect. So why am I wearing handcuffs? The reason hit me like a flash of lightning. It is because someone wants me right here. Someone set this all up. Someone knew exactly what to do to make me look guilty. The only things I did not know were who and why. Stevens left the highway and drove downtown. I could see the Travis County Courthouse out the window. The police station was right past it. It was a blocky, concrete structure that looked like a government building from the 1970s. It was practical and cold, a building where people's lives were handled like documents. My stomach felt like it was in a knot. This was not a nightmare. This was real. In 15 minutes, I would be booked, my fingerprints would be taken, and I would be photographed. I would be put in the system as if I had already been convicted. But I will not allow myself to panic. Panicking is a waste of time. I will remain completely focused. I will use every skill that I have, and I will prove that I have been framed because that is the truth. A frame up. It was a setup so perfectly planned that the Austin police came to my home with their guns out, sure that they had their person. Someone was very clever. It had to be a person who was close enough to know my daily schedule, my patterns, my life. That idea sent a cold feeling all through my body. Stevens drove into the station's underground garage. The bright fluorescent lights above us blinked on. He parked the car and turned off the engine. The quiet was heavy and made it hard to breathe. This was happening. He opened my door and helped me climb out. His touch was almost soft, as if the earlier forcefulness was gone. I just stood there in my bare feet and pajamas, hands cuffed behind my back, while he radioed that we had arrived. "The detective is going to talk to you in about an hour," Stevens said, his voice much quieter now. "First, you will have to be processed." I could only nod my head. I did not want to speak. As he led me toward the station's big steel door, I made a quiet promise to myself. I will discover who did this. I will prove that I am innocent. And I will make the person who tried to destroy my life regret this entire nightmare. I did not know it at the time, but the person who planned my downfall was someone I had protected my whole childhood. The 15-minute ride to the Austin police station felt like it took forever. My wrists were already becoming a dark purple color. The handcuffs dug into my skin with every bump on Cesar Chavez Street. I tried to move on the hard plastic seat, but it was useless. Through the wire mesh, I saw Austin waking up. People were buying tacos and going for jogs. They were living normal lives. Minutes ago, so was I. Suddenly, the police radio crackled. "Unit 47, the victim is stable at Del Seaton. Her husband, a major crimes detective, is there." My heart sank. A victim and her husband was a policeman? Officer Stevens caught my eye in the mirror. "Did you hear? A detective's wife and child." He let that sink in. "You chose the wrong people to anger." "But I am innocent," I whispered. He did not listen. We arrived at the station on 8th Street, a block of concrete and bars. Inside, the bright lights of the garage buzzed loudly. Stevens led me through a heavy door into a hall that smelled of strong cleaner. The booking room was large and impersonal. A woman in her 50s, Martinez, sat behind a long counter. She did not look at me. "Name?" she asked, her voice empty. "Reagan Sutton," Stevens said for me. She typed slowly with one finger. "Birth date." Stevens recited my details, turning me into just a file. The charges are attempted murder, assault, hit and run, and endangering a child. Martinez finally looked up at me with disgust. Child endangerment? A 7-year-old? She said. Let's get your fingerprints. First, a technician pressed my fingers onto a glass screen. Then came the flash of the camera for my mugshot against a white wall. I held up a sign with my name and a line of numbers. They had already emptied my pockets. I had nothing but my pajamas. Put her in cell 3, Martinez said to Stevens. We walked down a hallway lined with cells. One man was sleeping. A woman was crying somewhere nearby. The air smelled of sweat and panic. Cell 3 was just a concrete room. Stevens took off the handcuffs and pointed me in. The detective will be here soon, he told me. The steel doors slammed shut and the noise bounced off the walls. I sat on a freezing metal bench. The tiny room felt like it was closing in. It was about 8 feet by 10 feet with no windows, only a buzzing light above me. Jennifer Pfizer. The name from the report kept repeating in my head. It sounded so familiar. I thought of everyone I knew, but no one had that name. I did not know a Jennifer Pfizer. Then my blood ran cold. I remembered Detective Robert Pfizer from the Major Crimes Unit. His name was famous from a big case on the news. The victim was his wife, and their child was with them. A wave of pure terror swept over me. If the victim was a detective's wife, all of Austin's police would be against me. My alibi would mean nothing. The police protect their own, and I was their target now. I had to push away the fear and think clearly. At 9 o'clock last night, I was on a video call with my Singapore team. Marcus Taylor and Patricia Reed were there. The entire call was recorded with video and timestamps. It was perfect proof that I was innocent. So why was I sitting in jail? I heard footsteps coming toward my cell. A detective in a blazer stood outside. She was in her 40s with weary eyes. Miss Sutton, she announced, your bail has been paid. I just looked at her, completely confused. What did you say? Your father's attorney, Gregory Palmer, is here. The bond was $500,000. $500,000 from my father. The news sent a shiver down my spine. I had not made any calls. I was arrested only an hour ago. How did he find out? I never called him, I told her. She just shrugged her shoulders. He called here. He said he knew what happened. She opened the cell door. You can leave now. Your hearing is on Friday. But who told him? I repeated. I really do not know. Maybe a neighbor. She showed me the way down the hall. Mr. Palmer is in that room. A neighbor called my father at 7 in the morning, and my dad, who I had not talked to in 3 months, hired the best lawyer in Austin and paid $500,000. The detective led me to a small room. A man in a very nice suit stood up to greet me. Miss Sutton, he said with a calm voice, I am Gregory Palmer. Your father hired me. I looked straight at him. How did my father know I was arrested? Mr. Palmer gave me a smile that felt cold. Unfortunately, bad news travels very quickly. This case is about a detective's family. I was arrested at 7 in the morning. It was not on the news yet. Your father knows important people, the lawyer said. We should get you home. I have to understand how he found out. Mr. Palmer's tone became serious. You face 4 major charges. The prosecutor will want you in prison for a long time. We must focus on your case, not how your father operates. My phone buzzed on the table. Martinez had just returned it. The screen showed 47 missed calls. My father, Wallace, sent texts telling me to come to his house. My mother, Margaret, sent a message that said, Paige is a mess. Please come home. I read that text again. Paige is a mess, my sister. How could she be upset? Nobody knew I was arrested. I had not told a single person. Miss Sutton, Palmer said, watching me closely. I need to go back to my place, I said. I need my computer to figure this out. Your father wants a family meeting at his house. I will be there tonight. I have to get my things from my apartment first. Palmer did not look pleased. Your father was very clear about his request. I was firm. And I am being clear about going home first. I stood to leave. Thank you for posting the bail. I will call you later. I left the room before he could say another word. The bright sun hurt my eyes after the dark station. It was a hot September day in Austin. I was standing on the courthouse steps, released from jail but not truly free, and I had a terrible feeling that something was deeply wrong. My father found out I was arrested the moment it happened. A text from my mother said my sister Paige was falling apart, but Paige had no reason to even know. I took out my phone and opened my home security application. I had to see the footage from last night. I needed to know what happened while I was asleep. When the application loaded, my blood ran cold. Someone had logged into my account at 3:14 in the morning. The login was from an internet address that I knew instantly. It came from Westlake Hills, exactly where my parents live. Gregory Palmer looked just like a lawyer my father would hire. He wore an expensive suit and had cold, emotionless eyes. The air conditioning blasted in the tiny room. I shivered in my thin pajamas, feeling the tight bruises on my wrists. Palmer belonged on a company board, a man who smelled like generations of money. That is who he was, a man paid to make huge problems go away. He slid a file across the table and said, "Your father called me at 7 o'clock this morning. Your bail was $500,000. It is paid. You are free to go." I just stared at the file and did not touch it. How did he find out? Palmer gave a rehearsed smile. News travels fast in Austin, especially when it involves a detective's family. They arrested me at 7. I have been here less than 2 hours. This cannot be on the news yet. Your father has his ways that told him I was arrested at my place at 6:47 in the morning. I leaned in closer. He knew before anyone outside of this station knew. Palmer's fake smile finally disappeared. "I am not sure how your father got his information," he said. "What matters is that he acted to get you out." Why? The question just hung there between us. Palmer looked at me closely. "Because you are his daughter. I have not talked to him in 3 months." "Family is still family, Miss Sutton." Palmer finally opened the file. "Now we must create a plan. You face 4 very serious charges: attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, a felony hit and run, and endangering a child. The district attorney will not be lenient. The victim is the wife of Detective Robert Pfizer. Their 7-year-old little girl was in the car with her." My stomach churned. A 7-year-old girl. "I did not do this. That is what we have to prove, but right now the evidence points to you." He took out a piece of paper. "They found your driver's license at the crash scene. An anonymous 911 caller said they saw you run away. We need to confirm your alibi, find witnesses, and question the evidence." "What 911 call?" Palmer looked at his notes. "The call came in at 9:27 at night. The caller described a woman who looks like you running from the corner of Lamar and 6th. 9:27, that is just 10 minutes after the crash. Who called?" "It was anonymous," he answered. "That is our problem." My mind was spinning. You cannot trace an anonymous tip. It was made by someone who wanted to hide, someone who. "Miss Sutton." Palmer watched me carefully. "Do you have an alibi for last night?" "Yes. I was on a video call with clients in Singapore. It was from 9 to 10 o'clock in the evening. The whole call was recorded with video and timestamps. After we hung up, I was all alone in my apartment. Can anyone confirm you were there after 10? I said no. He told me that leaves a window of opportunity. Palmer wrote something on his notepad. The crash was at 9:14. He said if your call started at 9, you are on camera. That is a huge help for your case. We can use that. I was on camera for the whole hour. I never once left my apartment. We will need that recording, he told me. We also must learn how your license got to the scene of the crash. I started to speak, but I paused. How could my license be there? I was positive I had lost it 2 months ago. "I need my laptop," I told him. "All my work is on it at my apartment." Palmer just nodded. "Your father wants you at his house first. He is calling a family meeting." He said it so casually it sent a chill down my spine. How could my father even know what I needed? "I am sorry," I said. "You said he wants me at the house. Is that a direct message from him?" Palmer's face showed no emotion. "Your father is worried about you. He wants you to be safe and for everyone to be on the same page. Please tell him I will be there tonight," I said. "I need to go home and figure this all out first." Palmer's jaw clenched. "Your father gave specific instructions. He wants you in Westlake right now." The word "wants" sounded more like a command. I got up from my chair. "Thank you for taking care of the bail. I will contact you. Miss Sutton, I really must advise you to. I will call you later." I left before he could finish his sentence. The clerk at the desk gave me my things in a large brown envelope. My phone, my wallet, and my keys were inside. My phone's battery was dead. I had to borrow a charger and wait 10 minutes for it to turn on. As soon as it came to life, my screen filled with alerts. I had 47 missed calls. There were text messages from people I knew and some from people I did not. I started scrolling down the list. My father, Wallace, sent a text. "Stay calm, do not speak to anyone, come to Westlake." He sent that at 7:14 in the morning, just 30 minutes after my arrest. My mother, Margaret, texted, "Paige is a total wreck. Please come home." She sent that at 7:22. I looked at her message for a long time. Paige is a wreck. My sister, who is 28 years old, still lives at home. She plans weddings for rich people. We have not talked since July. Why would she be heartbroken? She did not even know about my arrest. I told no one, but maybe she knew somehow. I kept scrolling. My father sent more messages. My mother's business partner asked if I was okay. Some colleagues from Securite Solutions texted me too. How did so many people find out so fast? I signed the release forms without reading them and walked out of the station. The September sun was incredibly bright. The heat in Austin felt like a solid wall. The air was thick and humid, the kind that makes you sweat just standing still. The courthouse steps were almost empty. A man was smoking and a woman was yelling into her phone. They were just regular people living regular lives. They had released me, but I did not feel free at all. I opened my phone to make a call. I had to call my boss. I needed to explain that my arrest for attempted murder was a huge mistake. But first, I needed to understand what really happened last night. I opened my apartment's security application. My login let me see the cameras in the hall and the lobby. I could see on the video if anyone had come to my door. The application loaded very slowly on the station's bad wireless connection. Finally, the login screen showed up. The last time someone logged in was at 3:14 in the morning on September 17th, 2024. The internet address was 198.51.100.47. That was my parents' house in Westlake Hills. Someone had accessed my security from their house 12 miles away. It was only 4 hours before my arrest. My hands started to shake. Wallace and Margaret live at 1847 Westlake Drive. I knew that internet address. I had set up their whole home network 5 years ago. Someone from my own family had watched my security cameras in the middle of the night. They were either watching everything I did or they were deleting the proof. I looked back at the police station, then down at my phone. I saw my father's texts demanding I come home. In that single moment, it all became clear. This was not a mistake. This was a setup. My apartment felt strange as soon as I walked in. My only safe place now felt like a crime scene. My simple furniture and the large windows looking out at the lake used to make me feel calm. Nothing was out of place, but that was the problem. Everything was exactly where I left it 2 hours ago. That was just before three police officers kicked my door in and took me away in handcuffs. The coffee maker was still on. My cup of cold coffee sat on the counter. My laptop was open on the table. The screen was black because it was asleep. I locked the door behind me and slid every bolt into place. I leaned on it, trying to catch my breath. I needed a clear head. My father expected me to be there in about 6 hours. That gave me 6 hours to understand what was going on, 6 hours to find out who stole my identity and framed me for this terrible crime. I put my phone on the counter and woke up my laptop. The screen came on immediately. My password was saved and all my internet tabs were still open from last night. I saw my work dashboard and the video call with my client in Singapore. A report for a company in Dallas was half finished. Everything looked completely normal. But it was not normal at all. I opened a new browser to get into my personal security system. I built the entire thing myself 3 years ago. It monitored everything. It watched motion detectors, door locks, and live video. The whole apartment was secure and encrypted. I looked for the records from last night, September 16th. At 9 in the evening, the front door was locked. My smart home system recorded everything. My video call started at 9:02 in the evening. It ended at 10:14. Then a kitchen sensor activated. I started watching Netflix at 10:47. My bedroom lights went out at 11:32 and turned on at 6:30 this morning. This data was proof I never left my house. But the police did not care about my solid alibi. They were focused on a driver's license found at the accident. It was my driver's license. I closed my computer and went into my bedroom. My wallet was on the bedside table right in its usual spot. I opened it and checked inside. My bank cards were there, so was my company ID and a $20 bill, but my driver's license was gone. The plastic sleeve was empty. I just stared at it. When did I last use it? I sat down and tried to think. I rarely use my car because the traffic in Austin is terrible. My Tesla sits in the garage most of the time. I thought I last drove it several weeks ago. But that was not correct. I remembered the gym. My heart started beating faster. It was 2 months ago at the end of July. I had gone to a gym in Westlake Hills, which is near my parents' home. I was visiting for some family event that I could not remember. I think it was for a family birthday meal. I recall having my gym bag with my wallet and clothes inside. I put the bag in a locker and took a 45-minute exercise class. After showering, I left. It never occurred to me to check my wallet. I just put it in my bag and went home. A terrible feeling started to build inside me. I took my phone and looked through my pictures from July. I found one from July 21st. It was a picture of my sister Paige and me at my parents' huge house. She was grinning and wearing a white dress. I was still in my gym clothes. The timestamp on the photo was 11:47 in the morning. Behind us, my open gym bag was on a chair. All the color left my face. Paige was with me that morning. We ate brunch together after my workout. She had even helped bring my things inside the house. It would have been simple for her to take my license from my open bag. I fell onto the bed, looking at the picture. Paige was my sister. I knew she could be selfish and spoiled, but I never thought she was a criminal. She would not steal from me and set me up. Or could she? I remembered my mother's text from earlier. It said Paige was falling apart and I needed to come home. Why was she falling apart? I checked my phone again, but there were no messages from Paige. We had not spoken since the beginning of August. Our last conversation was about her engagement party. I told her that I could not make it. She replied with a sarcastic emoji. That was the last I heard from her. For us, this was pretty normal. Paige and I were never very close, but this situation felt different. This felt like a planned attack on my life. I opened my computer and looked at my building's security records again. At 3:14 in the morning on September 17th, somebody logged in from a distance. The internet address was from Westlake Hills, Texas. That person used a special code to get access. Whoever it was, they knew exactly when to check my security system. They knew I would have a perfect excuse for the crime. They knew I would be at home, and they still called the police to report me. I stood up and put my phone in my pocket. I was tired of waiting for my father to fix this. I was going to drive to Westlake right now and find out what my family did. The drive to Westlake Hills felt like I was entering enemy territory. I took the longer road that had better views of the city. The sun was setting, which painted the sky with beautiful orange and pink colors. It was a lovely Texas evening. I just kept my eyes on the road. When I finally got to the Westlake gate, my hands were not shaking, but my heart was beating fast. I typed in the code for the gate. The code was my birthday, which we had used for 15 years. The large iron gate opened very slowly. The house at 1847 Westlake Drive was at the end of a long private road. It was a large mansion with 3 floors, big white columns, and a driveway that went in a circle. It seemed like a house owned by a family with old money, but my father had bought it only 12 years ago when his company did very well. Every single window in the house was bright with light. I parked my car in back of my mother's car and took a moment to calm down. I told myself to stay calm. I took a big breath, picked up my phone, and got out of the car. The front door opened before I could even knock on it. My father, Wallace Sutton, was standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. He was 61 years old with silver hair and a clean navy suit. He said, I was wondering when you would show up. Then he said, we have to talk. I walked right by him and did not say a word. The entrance hall was exactly the same. It still had the white marble floors and the huge crystal light fixture. A very large painting of the Texas hills was on one wall. The house smelled like lavender and wealth. My mother, Margaret, came out of the kitchen. She seemed smaller than I remembered, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and a clean linen shirt. She rushed toward me. Oh, Reagan, my dear, this is all so terrible. Are you doing okay? I moved back so she was not able to touch me. How did you find out I was arrested? My father's face got very tight. Gregory called me. Now please come and have a seat. We have to make a plan, Wallace announced. He turned and walked into the living room, expecting me to follow. My mother, Margaret, waited a moment before trailing after him. I stayed in the entrance, looking around. This house never felt like my own home, even after so many years. It was always my father's house, with his rules and his money. I finally went into the living room. Wallace sat in his big leather armchair with a glass of scotch. That was his special chair, and nobody else could sit there. Margaret perched on the edge of the sofa, looking anxious. They both stared at me like I was a puzzle they had to figure out. I took a seat across from them and crossed my arms. Wallace started talking. Gregory thinks their case against you is weak. They only have your driver's license and an unknown tip. We can win this. I stared at him. An unknown tip? What sort of tip? My mother's hands twisted in her lap. Someone called 911. They said they saw a woman who looked like you running from the accident. I asked, who called them? My father's tone became sharp. It was unknown. That is what the word means. I looked right at him. He was not telling the truth. I saw it in how he held his glass. I saw it in how my mother avoided my eyes. They knew exactly who made that phone call. Before I could say more, I heard footsteps from the kitchen. Reagan? It was Paige standing in the doorway. Her eyes were big and her makeup was smudged from crying. She wore a large cashmere sweater and yoga pants. Her blonde hair was in a messy bun. She had clearly been crying for a long time. She hurried to me with her arms open wide. I stood completely still and did not move toward her. Paige stopped a foot away, her smile vanishing. Oh my goodness, are you all right? Her voice was shaky. I cannot believe this is all happening. Jennifer Fisher is good friends with my wedding planner. This is just terrible. I suddenly felt very calm and quiet. Your wedding planner knows Jennifer. Paige blinked her eyes. Well, Austin is a small town. Everybody knows everybody, you know? I looked closely at her face. The tears seemed real. Her eyes were red and her face was puffy. But something felt wrong. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were focused and clear. She was not breaking down. She was putting on a show. Paige, I said very slowly, where were you last night at 9:14? The entire room went quiet. Wallace slammed his drink down on the table. What kind of a question is that? I kept my eyes on Paige. It is a very easy question. Where were you? Paige's mouth opened and closed a few times. I I was right here at home with mom and dad. We ate dinner. I turned my look to Margaret. Is that the truth? Yes, she said very fast, a little too fast. Yes, we all ate dinner here. What did you eat for dinner? Margaret paused. I cooked chicken, a roasted chicken. What time? 7, Wallace interrupted. We ate dinner at 7 o'clock. Paige was here the entire night. What are you suggesting, Reagan? I slowly got up from my chair. Paige took one small step back from me. I am not suggesting anything, I said. I am just asking questions because someone used my driver's license to ruin a woman's life last night. Someone accessed my apartment's security system at 3 in the morning from inside this house. And someone called 911 to make sure I was the one who got blamed. That is completely absurd, Wallace began to say. Is it? I looked straight at Paige. Is it really? My eyes moved down to her left hand. It was covered in a bandage. White gauze was wrapped around her knuckles and held with medical tape. What happened to your hand? I asked her. Paige glanced down at it, then quickly put her hands inside her sweater pockets. It is nothing. I cut myself when I was cooking. When? Yesterday? Was that before or after 9:14? Reagan, that is enough. Wallace was standing now, his voice loud like thunder. You are very upset. You are afraid. But you will not enter my house and accuse your own sister. I have to use the bathroom. Nobody in the room moved at all. Upstairs, I said. Wallace's jaw was tight and firm. After a very long pause, he gave me a quick nod. I walked out of the living room, went up the familiar stairs, and turned left. But I did not go to the bathroom. I walked into Paige's bedroom. What I would discover in that room was about to change all of our lives forever. Paige's old room looked exactly the same. It still had the light pink walls. The feeling of easy money was in the air like a costly perfume. I shut the door quietly behind me and stood perfectly still, just listening. I could hear Wallace's angry voice from downstairs and then my mother's soft answers. Then I heard the sound of glasses clinking. Perfect, they thought I was in the bathroom. I looked around the bedroom. It had a big bed with a clean white blanket and pillows arranged just right. The makeup table was covered with expensive lotions, skin treatments, and jade rollers. Through the closet door, which was slightly open, I could see designer bags on shelves like they were in a museum. A laptop was on a desk near the window. The screen was dark except for a small glowing light. It was in sleep mode. I walked across the room in 3 quick steps and touched the mousepad. The screen immediately lit up. There was no password, only a clean, bright desktop screen. The background was a professional picture from an engagement photo session. Paige was smiling at the camera in a white lace dress. Her hand was on the chest of a man in his 30s with dark hair, a nice watch, and a confident expression. I did not know who he was. I looked at the icons at the bottom of the screen: Safari, Messages, Instagram, a calendar, and 7 open internet pages. I moved closer to get a better look. The first few pages were what you might expect: a wedding location in Fredericksburg, a Pinterest page called Fall Wedding Ideas. A Saks Fifth Avenue online cart had 3 dresses for bridesmaids. It was all very normal wedding planning. I was about to close the laptop when I saw the very last internet tab. The label said private browsing. My hand stopped right above the trackpad. I clicked on it. A list of websites showed up on the screen. It was the search history from a private session. It seemed one page was still open. As I looked down the list, I felt a deep chill. September 14th, 2024, at 11:47 at night. How to anonymously report a hit and run in Austin. September 14th, 2024, at 11:52 at night. Do police check alibis from family members? September 15th, 2024, at 12:03 in the morning. Austin Police non-emergency phone number. September 15th, 2024, at 12:18 in the morning. How long does a forensic analysis take? September 16th, 2024, at 3:47 in the afternoon. Can police get back deleted text messages? September 16th, 2024, at 8:52 at night. What is the punishment for leaving an accident scene in Texas? I could only look at the words. My heart was beating fast in my chest. Paige had researched this for days, well before the accident happened. She learned how to secretly report a crime, how to avoid getting caught, and how to frame someone who was innocent. And on the night of the accident, she did all of those things. My hands were shaking as I took out my phone and opened the camera. I took 3 fast pictures, one of the entire screen, and 2 focused on the search history. I closed the internet browser and put the laptop back to sleep, making the screen dark again. I moved away from the desk, breathing heavily. I knew that I needed more proof. The internet history was not going to be enough. A good lawyer would say it was just curiosity. They might claim Paige was writing a crime novel or some other wild story. I needed something real. I went to the makeup table and opened the top drawer. It had makeup brushes, lipsticks, and fake eyelashes inside. In the second drawer, I found tangled necklaces and a blue Tiffany box. I opened the third drawer and I froze. At the very back, under a pile of old birthday cards, was a small black notebook. I took it out. The cover was simple and plain. It did not have a title. It was just a cheap spiral notebook, the kind you would use for a shopping list. When I opened it, I felt sick to my stomach. The first page was dated July 29th, 2024, day 1. Slipped R's driver's license from her gym bag. She had no idea. I am keeping it in my car for when the time is right. I turned the page. Day 18. Researched Austin police methods. They always arrest the person whose ID is at the scene. They never question a tip from an unknown caller. Day 32. I found the ideal target. Jennifer Fisher, a detective's wife. This is a smart move. If I hit a police officer's wife, they will investigate very thoroughly. Reagan will not have a chance. Day 47. I did a practice drive. I drove by 4th and Elm at 9:15 at night. The street is very dark. There are no cameras. The target always walks her dog there at that exact time. Day 60. The engagement party is this weekend. Reagan is not coming. That is good. She is already creating distance from the family. That will make it easier to ruin her life. Day 75. Only 1 week is left. I have prepared everything, the license, the car, and the plan. Reagan's perfect little life is going to fall apart, and I will finally become the daughter they are proud of. I felt like I was running out of air. My eyesight began to get fuzzy. Paige did more than just steal my license. She had planned this for months. She had followed Jennifer Fisher. She had practiced the driving route. She had researched how to frame me, step by step, like it was a project for school. It was as if I was just a problem that needed to be taken care of. I heard someone walking in the hallway. I pushed the notebook back into the drawer, shut it quietly, and stood up right when the door opened. Paige was standing in the doorway, and her eyes looked very suspicious. Reagan, what are you doing in my bedroom? I made my face look blank, trying to seem tired and stressed. Yes, I just needed some time alone. It has been a very difficult day. Paige came in and her eyes moved around the room. She looked at the desk, the closet, and then the makeup table. Why did you come into my room? The other bathroom was being used. I said, I just needed a quiet place. Her eyes stayed on the desk and the laptop for a moment. Then she looked at me again. You should probably go home, she said, and her voice became softer. You need to get some sleep. This has been very hard. I nodded my head. Yes, I believe you are right. I started to walk to the door, but Paige held on to my wrist. You believe me, correct? Her voice was shaking and new tears started to fill her eyes. That I was right here with Mom and Dad. You do believe me, right? I looked down at her hand, at her knuckles. They had fresh scratches all over them. The skin was red and sore, like it was just starting to heal. It looked like the kind of injury an airbag makes when it pushes your hands into the steering wheel. I looked up and straight into her eyes. Of course I believe you, I said to her. You are my sister. She looked very relieved, and she let go of my arm. I left the room, walked down the stairs, and went right by Wallace and Margaret in the living room. I did not even say goodbye. I walked out the front door, got into my car, and drove off. But I did not drive home. I stopped my car 2 blocks away from the house. My hands were shaking as I held the steering wheel. I pulled out my phone. 3 things were now completely clear. First, Paige had looked up how to frame someone for a serious crime weeks before it happened. Second, she had new injuries on her hands that looked like they came from a car's airbag. And third, my parents were helping her hide the truth. But I still did not know the answer to the most important question. I could not figure out why Paige had been planning to destroy me for such a long time. I did not get any sleep that night. By 6 in the morning, I was in my office at home. 3 computer screens lit up the dark room as I looked for any digital evidence I could find. The pictures from Paige's room were on the left screen. I looked closely at the internet searches, dates, and times. The screen in the middle was a command terminal, blinking and waiting for me. On the right screen, I began to make a timeline in a spreadsheet. On July 21st, my driver's license disappeared from my gym bag. On July 29th, day one of Paige's journal. From September 14th through the 16th, she searched online for how to frame a person for a hit and run. The accident took place on September 16th at 9:14 at night. I was arrested on September 17th at 6:47 in the morning. But the official story had some very big problems. An internet history and a diary were not going to be enough. I needed real proof to use in court. I needed proof that could stand up against the expensive lawyers Wallace would definitely hire. I leaned back in my chair, had some cold coffee, and looked up at the ceiling. All of a sudden, I remembered something. 5 years ago, my mother asked me to set up their iCloud family sharing plan. She wanted a simple way to share pictures and calendars. I worked for a whole afternoon to connect all of their accounts. Since I was the one who set it up, I was still the family administrator. This meant that I could get into their devices. I sat up straight, opened a new window, and went to the iCloud login website. I typed in the family admin password. The main page loaded and it showed the 4 accounts for my family. I clicked on Paige's name. A list of her registered devices came up: an iPhone 14 Pro, a MacBook Pro, and an iPad Air. Every one of them was online at that moment. All of them were saving their information. A small smile appeared on my face. Let's see what you have been hiding, little sister. I chose the iPhone backup from 2 days ago, September 16th, the day of the crash. The 6 gigabyte download started. I poured myself another cup of coffee and waited. The progress bar moved very slowly. It got to 90%. Then it was finished. I opened the file with a special data recovery program that I use for my work. The software let me see everything that was on her phone: her text messages, pictures, app data, call records, and location history. I decided to look at her messages first. The program was able to get back a few conversations that had been deleted. I clicked on the first one. It was a text message conversation between Paige and a phone number I did not recognize. The area code was 214, which was for Dallas. I scrolled all the way to the beginning of the message history. The first message was from July 15th, 2024. The text read, "I have what you asked for, $500 Bitcoin only." Paige wrote back, "How can I know that it is real?" The unknown person answered, "It will scan just fine. I have used it before. I never had a problem." The horrible truth hit me very hard. She had purchased a fake identification card. I continued to read. On July 28th, Paige asked if it would work at bars. The seller said that it would, but then he warned her that just one drunk driving charge would be the end of it. My hands squeezed the arms of my chair very tightly. Drunk driving. She had really planned to cause a crash while drunk. She was going to use my driver's license to avoid getting in trouble. She had even planned far enough ahead to have a second identity. I took a picture of the screen with my phone and put it in my evidence folder. After that, I looked at her financial records. Paige's Venmo account was connected to the family's iCloud account, which let me see all of her payments. I went back to the middle of July to the 15th. I found a payment of $500 to a user with the name Alex M. The note for the payment said, "I appreciate the referral." I looked for that username and found an Alex Martinez, a 32-year-old man from Dallas. Then a security tool I use for my work discovered his name on the dark web. I found Alex Martinez's name on dark websites that sold fake identities and untraceable phones. This man was a professional, not a beginner. Paige had paid him $500 through a disguised Venmo transaction. I kept digging deeper. I got into Paige's Coinbase account, which she had linked to our family account to buy crypto years ago. I examined her transaction records. On July 15th, 2024, she bought $500 in Bitcoin. That same amount was then moved to an anonymous digital wallet. The wallet could not be traced, but the date and time matched perfectly. She got the Bitcoin the same day she paid Alex Martinez. She had been careful from the very beginning. I added the Coinbase transaction to my pile of evidence. Then I looked at her credit card statements. The charges were mostly for normal things like makeup, new clothes, and yoga classes, but one charge stood out. On August 10th, 2024, she spent $200 at a place called Insight Surveillance. A fast search showed it was a private detective agency in South Austin, known for being expensive and discreet. My heart started to beat faster. Why did she hire a private investigator? Was she watching me? Or was she following Jennifer Fisher to learn my routine and create her alibi? I opened a new tab on my browser and searched for the company's website. The company's webpage listed services for monitoring people and mapping their daily routines. They had the power to ruin a life and make it look like a horrible accident. I slumped in my chair, struggling for air. This was not a moment of bad judgment. It was not a desperate attempt to cover a lie. Paige had been planning this for 2 months or even longer. She obtained a false driver's license. She learned how to set me up. She paid a private detective. She used cash and crypto to hide her trail. She even practiced the drive. She chose her victim. She wrote it all down like a business plan. My phone vibrated with a text from Wallace, checking in on me. I ignored it. I could not talk to him yet. Not until I had everything. I turned back to the glowing screens. The cloud backup was still downloading. I searched through files, looking at photos and calendar notes. Then I saw it. A folder on her tablet was labeled Private Journal. The last time it was changed was September 16th, 2024, at 11:32 in the evening, right before I was arrested. My hand trembled over the mouse. I knew that the journal would confirm my worst fear. Paige did not just frame me, she documented the whole thing. Every step, every choice, every single move she made to destroy my life was in there. I clicked open the folder and began to read. Hold on, before I share what was in Paige's 90-day plan to ruin me, I want you to guess what happens. Type a number 1 if you think she did this by herself. Type a 2 if you think my parents were part of it. Or type a 3 if you believe this story is about to get even more wild. This is not just proof, it is her whole playbook. Day 1, jealousy. Day 47, victim selected. Day 89, goodbye to my big sister. She outlined it all, so proud and methodical. I should say that some details are altered for this story. This deals with intense betrayal, so you may want to stop here. But if you want to see how I learned my own sister plotted my downfall for 3 months, please keep watching. This journal reveals everything. It will change what you think about family. I made a pot of coffee knowing it would be a long night. The journal held 90 days of her thoughts. I sat down, opened the file, and started reading. The first entry was from June 18th, 2024, 3 full months before the accident. I took a deep breath. Day 1, dinner tonight. Dad went on and on about Reagan's promotion. $178,000 a year. Reagan. Reagan is a director at 33. I am so done hearing her name. I plan weddings for wealthy people, but Dad acts like I do nothing. I am sick of being in her shadow. I stared at the screen in complete disbelief. It was all because of jealousy. Just simple jealousy. My job, my salary, my life. That was enough for her to want to destroy me. I remember that dinner on June 18th. Wallace convinced me to go celebrate. Paige was so sweet that evening, hugging me and saying she was happy for me. But inside, she despised me. I continued reading. Day 15. I have an idea. Reagan is so smug about her cybersecurity job, she will not expect this. First, I need her license. Next, I need to find the perfect person. It has to be someone who makes the cops so angry they skip looking for an alibi. My hands began to shake. The perfect person. She chose Jennifer on purpose. It was not an accident, it was a cold decision. For 2 weeks, she schemed to destroy me. She knew the secret was a victim that would make police too upset to investigate properly. I kept scrolling. Day 28. Reagan goes to the Westlake gym every Wednesday. So predictable. I will run into her tomorrow. I will take her license while she showers. I closed my eyes. July 12th. I was at the gym that day. She texted me, I am by mom's. Want to have brunch after your workout? I was so happy to get that message. We talked for a while and I left my bag open when I went to shower. When I came back, Paige was gone and my license was too. I read on my stomach in knots. Day 35. I got it. Reagan's license is in my possession. She does not even know it is gone. So naive. Now I just need to find the right person to hit. So naive. She used that word to describe me, her own sister, the one who protected her for 30 years. My only mistake was believing in her. I made myself look at the next entry. Day 40. I spotted Reagan at her coffee place today. She looked so happy. That will not last much longer. A chill went down my spine. July 20th. Cosmic coffee on South Congress. I recall feeling watched that day, but when I looked around, the street seemed empty. It was not empty. Paige was out there, staring at me, planning how to tear my world down. Day 47. I found her. Jennifer, Detective Robert Fisher's wife. A pediatric nurse, she is the ideal innocent victim. She drives home from work on Tuesdays and Thursdays around 9 at night. Her drive goes directly through Lamar and 6th. Here is the best part. When a police officer's family is hurt, the entire department mobilizes. They will arrest whoever's ID is at the crime scene. They will not ask questions until later. Reagan will not have time to prove her innocence. A wave of nausea hit me. She selected a detective's wife with cold, calculated precision. She knew police would move quickly from pure emotion and would not check my alibi. She turned the legal system into a weapon to use against me. I read on. The entries became more detailed and organized. Day 52. I hired a private detective in South Austin. I paid $200 for a complete file on Jennifer Fisher's daily life. It was worth every penny. She hired someone to follow Jennifer just to learn her movements. This was beyond envy. This was a mission. Day 60. The engagement party is soon. Reagan will not be there. Perfect. She is already pulling away from the family. This will make destroying her simpler. August 10th. I did not go to her party. I said I had to work. I thought I was just dodging family arguments. I did not know I was making her job easier. Day 68. I bought a counterfeit ID in Dallas for $500 in Bitcoin. It works if scanned, so I can use it if I get pulled over beforehand. Reagan's license will be untouched until the right moment. She planned for everything. A false name, hidden payments, and backup plans. This was not a crime of passion. It was a calculated attack. Day 75. I practiced it last night. I drove Dad's Range Rover through the intersection after drinking at 9:15. I saw no police cars and no cameras. The timing is perfect. Jennifer drives by at that precise time each night. I had to turn away from the monitor. My eyes were getting watery. She practiced it. She drove drunk on purpose to test her plan, ensure her escape, and get the timing just right. This was not some awful error, and it was not a frantic attempt to hide a crime. It was a dry run. On September 2nd, I was at home that night working. Just 12 miles away, my sister was practicing how to destroy my life. I forced myself to keep reading. Day 82. I shared the plan with Mom. She wept for a little while, but then Dad spoke with her. He told her, Reagan has always been difficult. She acted like she was so much above us. He added, this whole situation will teach her to be humble. Mom then consented to make the anonymous 911 call. She would use a disposable phone, claiming she saw a person resembling Reagan run from the area. The plan was flawless. I felt something shatter deep inside me. My own mother had approved this. She cried, but Wallace persuaded her to go along with it. They both believed I had this coming. I was a problem for not letting Wallace dictate my career. I was a problem for becoming self-sufficient at 25 without his assistance. For that, he thought a prison term would set me straight. With my vision blurred by tears, I scrolled to the last entries. Day 89, September 16th, the evening before my arrest. Everything is ready for tomorrow night. I will hit Jennifer's car at approximately 9:17. Reagan will be on her useless Zoom call, a strong alibi that will make no difference. I will put her license on the driver's seat. Mom will call 911 with an unknown tip. By morning, Reagan will be in a jail cell. She will lose her job, her good name, and her freedom. Finally, she will understand what it is like to possess nothing. And I will become the dutiful daughter, the child Dad is proud of. Goodbye, big sister. I could not get my breath. The words on the screen were a blur. She aimed to ruin me entirely, not simply to frame me, but to wipe me out. She intended to steal everything I had built and enjoy my suffering. And she wrote it all down like it was just a list of errands. Goodbye, big sister, as if I were no longer alive to her. I leaned back, feeling completely empty. 90 days. She took 90 days to orchestrate my ruin. But there was one last entry from that very morning, September 18th, just hours before. I clicked on it. Day 90. Reagan is free on bail. She is probably in her apartment right now, trying to piece it all together. Let her try. If she even thinks it was me, she has zero proof. By the time she uncovers anything, accepting a plea bargain will seem like her smartest move. Mom and Dad are managing the attorney. The plan is unfolding perfectly. I glanced at the time. 6:47 in the morning. That was the exact minute I began my own investigation. Paige did not realize I had found her journal. She did not know I was in her iCloud. She was not aware I had copies of her searches, her fund transfers, her Bitcoin purchases, and her texts with the fake ID maker. She believed she was safe. She believed the fight was over. That would soon be her greatest mistake. I shut my laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment. My coffee was now cold. The sun had risen higher, filling my apartment with light, but I did not notice. I had the proof. I had it all. Browser history, bank records, text messages, and a 90-day journal that laid out every step of her plot to frame me for attempted murder. Yet I was unsure about my next move. I could not just go to the police and present all of it. Paige would say I fabricated it. Wallace would get a team of expensive lawyers to make it disappear. Margaret would lie to the court. Plus, I got the journal from our shared family iCloud. It was not against the law, but Palmer would call it hacking. Any lawyer would claim the evidence was improperly obtained and could not be used. I needed something more than just proof. I needed a strategy. I got up, poured out the cold coffee, and looked out over the Austin skyline. Somewhere in this city, Paige was having a normal day, arranging weddings and messaging friends, acting like she was concerned for me. She was unaware I possessed her diary. She had no clue I had just spent 6 hours tracking every dollar, every erased message, and every single lie. She believed I was still confused, still beaten, still the trusting older sister she had always known. And she had no clue that I was now coming after her. I required assistance, not from my family's attorney, but from someone who valued the truth. I glanced at my phone for a second, then I looked up the main number for the Austin Police Department. My thumb paused just above the call icon. This one call would change the course of everything. My family would learn I had turned on them. Paige would know I was no longer a victim. But then I saw Jennifer Fisher in a hospital bed and her 7-year-old daughter who suffered a concussion. I recalled the 90 days of planning, 90 days of careful scheming, and 90 days of my sister believing I should have my life destroyed. I tapped the button. The phone rang only twice before an operator answered. Austin Police Department, how may I direct your call? I have to talk to the detective on my case, I stated. My name is Reagan Sutton. I was brought in 2 days ago for attempted murder. The case number is 47921. There was a short silence, then I heard keyboard clicks. That case belongs to Detective Bradley. Major crimes. Please hold. The line went to hold music. I stood waiting, my heart racing inside my chest. Then a man's voice, low and weary, spoke. This is Bradley. I said, Detective, my name is Reagan Sutton. I am the person arrested for the hit and run on Jennifer Pfizer. I know who you are, Miss Sutton. This is not how this works. You need to speak through your attorney. I have proof I was framed, I said. My sister is the one responsible, and I need 1 hour of your time. There was silence. Then he said, your lawyer warned me you might do this. Appearing desperate will not help you in court, Miss Sutton. I have her journal, I said. It contains 90 days of entries. She wrote down the whole plan, including why she picked your partner's wife as the victim. The quiet on the other end of the phone stretched for much longer this time. When Bradley finally responded, his voice was sharp. Get to the station, 2 in the afternoon, and show up by yourself. I walked into the main police station at 1:55 in the afternoon. I was carrying my laptop and a USB stick that had encrypted files of everything I had found. Bradley was there in the lobby. He was a big man in his late 40s with graying hair and intense blue eyes that looked like they had seen it all. He had on a white dress shirt with the sleeves pushed up and a detective's badge on his belt. He did not offer to shake my hand. He only said, "This way." He guided me down a few long hallways into a small interview room. The room was windowless with just a table, 4 chairs, and a camera mounted in the corner. He pointed to a chair. You have 30 minutes. Make me believe you. I set my laptop on the table and opened the journal file. This is my sister Paige's private journal. I gained access to it lawfully. I am the administrator for our family iCloud account, which I created 5 years ago. My permissions were never taken away. I swiveled the laptop so he could see the display. This entry is from day 47, July 30th, 2024. Bradley leaned in, reading the text quietly. I found the one. Detective Robert Pfizer's wife, Jennifer. She is a pediatric nurse, a totally blameless target. Her drive home from the hospital is identical every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m., past Lamar and 6th Street. And this is the smart part. When a police officer's family member gets hurt, the entire department goes all out. They will arrest the person whose ID is at the scene and figure out the details later. Reagan will have zero chance to claim she is innocent. His expression hardened into stone. He told me, go on. I went to day 89, which was September 16th, the evening before my arrest. Everything is prepared for tomorrow night. I will crash into Jennifer's car at about 9:17. Reagan will be on her pointless Zoom call. It is a perfect alibi that will not matter in the end. I will leave her license on the driver's seat. Mom will phone 911 with a secret tip. By sunrise, Reagan will be behind bars in a jail cell. Bradley read that entry a second time. He then sat back and crossed his arms over his chest. This suggests the whole thing was a setup, but how can I be sure you did not just write this yourself? I had anticipated that question. You can examine the file's metadata. The entries were made on the exact dates and times that are shown. Also, check Paige's device history. She was in this file the day before the crash. I can show you the iCloud log. I brought up another window on the laptop. There is more than that. A Venmo payment to someone in Dallas who makes fake identification. A Bitcoin purchase happened on the very same day, and I recovered text messages about buying a driver's license. I turned the laptop back toward him. Bradley leaned closer, his jaw set. He studied the Venmo records, the Coinbase history, and the recovered texts. When he was done, he looked at me. You also mentioned an alibi we did not look into. Why is that? Because you arrested me before even asking. I was in a Zoom meeting with a client from Singapore from 9 to 10 p.m. on the night it happened. The entire conference is recorded, time-stamped, and saved online. I can give you the link this very minute. Bradley's eyes grew narrow. Why did your lawyer not tell us about this? Because my father's lawyer is not trying to prove my innocence, I said. He is trying to protect Paige. Bradley got up and walked to the other side of the room. He stood there quietly for several moments. At last, he faced me again. If this is real, it is much more than a car accident. This is a conspiracy. It includes attempted murder and interfering with an investigation. Are your parents a part of this? My mother made the anonymous 911 call. I said she was at their home in Westlake Hills, which is a full 8 miles away from where it happened. You can check it. Look at the cell phone tower data for that 911 call. The proof is right there. Bradley just stared at me. Then he took out his phone and dialed a number. Fisher, it is Bradley. Meet me in conference room B. About 2 minutes after, the door opened and Detective Robert Fisher walked in. He looked to be in his early 50s, younger than Bradley, with tired eyes and a wedding band. He saw me and his face became stern. Detective Fisher, I said in a low voice, I am so sorry for what happened to your wife and daughter, but I did not do it and I can prove it. Bradley pointed at the laptop. Read day 47. Fisher bent over the screen. I saw his expression shift from puzzled to shocked and then to pure rage. He read the whole thing 2 times. He looked up at Bradley. Is this legitimate? The file information is solid, Bradley said. The cloud backup matches. We also have bank records, messages, and an alibi we never looked into. Fisher looked at me, his voice trembling with feeling. Your sister planned this. She targeted my wife. Yes, I said, because she knew that would guarantee a fast response from the department. She was banking on all of you being too emotional to look into my side of the story. Fisher's hands balled into tight fists. He looked at Bradley. I am officially off this case. It is a conflict of interest now, but you need to bring her in right away. Bradley nodded. I agree, but we are going to follow the rules exactly. He looked at me. Miss Sutton, if I go forward with this, we will have to investigate your entire family. Your sister could face an attempted murder charge. Your parents could be charged with conspiracy and for obstructing justice. Are you prepared for that? I thought about what Paige wrote in her journal. Goodbye, big sister. I saw Jennifer Fisher in that hospital bed and I saw her 7-year-old daughter's injury. I thought about the 90 days of planning, 90 days of anger, and 90 days of her plotting my absolute ruin. I looked straight at Bradley. I am prepared, but I need to ask for one thing before we start. Bradley waited. I want to be the one who questions Paige on the official record. That night, Bradley made the arrangements. I sat across from him in the same room where I had shown him my proof. I watched him dial Paige's number and put the call on speaker. My hands were still in my lap, but my heart was pounding. This is the plan, Bradley had said 20 minutes before. We are asking her to come in as a witness, not a suspect. She will not think she needs a lawyer. You will be there as the victim asking for her help. She will think she is there to support your story. And we will be recording, I had asked. Every single word. A two-way mirror with complete audio and video. If she admits anything, it will hold up in court. Bradley had leaned a little closer. But Reagan, you are not allowed to force a confession out of her. No threats and no deals. You just show her the evidence and let her talk. Can you do that? I had looked him right in the eye. I have spent my whole life protecting Paige from her own actions. Tomorrow, I will not protect her anymore. As the phone rang, Bradley's voice turned calm and professional. Miss Sutton, my name is Detective James Bradley with the Austin Police Department. I am calling about the incident involving Jennifer Fisher. Paige's voice on the speaker sounded wary. Yes, how can I help? We know you are Reagan Sutton's sister. We hoped you could come in tomorrow morning as a witness to help us confirm Reagan's usual schedule and her alibi. There was a short silence. Then Paige's voice became softer, sounding relieved. Of course, I will do anything to help my sister. Reagan did not do this. 9 in the morning tomorrow, at the Central Station. You will not need an attorney. This is just for a witness statement. I will be there, Paige promised. The call disconnected. Bradley looked over at me. She sounded relieved. She thinks she is coming to help you convict me, I said softly. Good. Let her believe that until the moment she sees you. For the next hour, Bradley taught me interrogation methods. We sat facing each other at the table. He used a notepad and I had my laptop open to Paige's journal. Start slowly, he told me. Build a friendly connection first, then bring out the evidence one by one. Do not show her everything at once. Let her trap herself. What if she lies? She is going to lie. Let her. Every lie she tells will make it harder to deny the truth later. He pointed to his notepad. Watch for the little changes in her face. When Paige touches her nose, she is lying. If she looks up and to her right, she is making things up. If she leans back, she is putting distance between herself and her guilt. And what if she tries to get up and leave? She is not under arrest, so technically, she is allowed to go. But people like her love to talk. If you give her the opportunity, she will talk her way into a corner. I nodded, trying to take it all in. Bradley got up. Go home. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. I did not go straight home. I went to a coffee shop on South Congress and bought a black coffee I never drank. I just sat by the window watching the city. I saw couples holding hands and tourists taking pictures by the murals. They were just normal people living normal lives. I remembered Paige as an 8-year-old girl crying after she fell from her bike and scraped her knee. I had carried her inside, cleaned the cut, and put a cartoon bandage on it. Ray, you will always be here to take care of me, right? She had asked. Always, I had promised. I remembered Paige at 16 after she got caught stealing a designer bracelet from a department store. I talked the store manager out of calling the police, paid for the bracelet, and we drove home without saying a word. She never once said she was sorry. I remembered Paige at 23 when she needed to borrow $5,000 for rent. I sent her the money that same day. She never paid me back, and I never brought it up because that is what a big sister does. They protect, they sacrifice, they give love and ask for nothing back. And in return, Paige had spent 90 days planning my destruction. It was after midnight when I got home. I could not sleep. I sat at my desk and read Paige's journal again, learning specific lines by heart. Day 47. If I hit a cop's wife, they will use every resource they have. Day 75. I did a practice run last night. Day 89. Goodbye, big sister. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, saying the words until they felt empty of all feeling. Paige, did you take my driver's license again? Paige, did you take my driver's license again? By 3 in the morning, I had said it 50 times. By 5 in the morning, I was just looking at the ceiling, waiting for my alarm. At 6 in the morning, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Paige. The police want me to come in this morning to give a statement for you. I am so nervous. What should I tell them? I just looked at the screen. She was asking me for advice. She wanted my help to ruin me. I typed my answer very slowly. Just tell the truth, Paige. That is all any of us can do. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared, vanished, and then appeared again. Finally, her reply arrived. Okay, I love you, sis. I put my phone down and shut my eyes. In only 3 hours, Paige would enter the Austin Police Department thinking she was going to save herself. She had no idea she was walking right into an ambush, and I, her own sister, had set the trap. I got to the station at 8:30 in the morning. Bradley found me in the hall outside the interrogation room. This was a different room from before, a smaller one with a metal table bolted to the floor and a chair on each side. A camera was in the corner. A huge two-way mirror covered most of one wall. Fisher is on the other side of that glass, Bradley said softly. He wants to see this for himself. I nodded slightly. The audio and video are recording. I will get her when she arrives. You will already be sitting down. I will introduce you as the victim who is here to prove your innocence. I will say that you asked to talk to her yourself. Then I will leave the room. And what if she asks why I am here? Just say you wanted to thank her for coming to back up your story. Make her feel comfortable. I glanced at the two-way mirror. I could not see Fisher, but I could feel him there, watching and waiting. He was waiting for the person who hurt his wife to walk in here and confess. What if she denies it all? I asked. Bradley's face was serious. Then we will have to build this case the long and difficult way. We can get warrants and run forensics, but a confession would be faster, he suggested. And then she belongs to us. I finished his sentence. Completely ours. At 5 minutes to 9 in the morning, a call came through on the detective's radio. Our person of interest just arrived in the lobby. He looked over at me. Are you ready for this? My mind flashed through the last 90 days. I saw Jennifer Fisher in her hospital bed. I remembered the text Paige sent me this morning. It said, I love you, sis. I took the seat facing the door and said firmly, I am ready. The room felt colder than I expected. Or maybe the chill was coming from inside me. I sat perfectly still. My hands were folded on the table. My eyes were locked on the door. Right at 9 o'clock, the door swung open. Officer Stevens walked Paige into the room. He was the same officer who arrested me just 3 days earlier. Paige wore a cream sweater, jeans, and flats. Her hair was tied back in a perfect ponytail. She seemed completely calm, like she was meeting a friend for lunch, not coming to an interrogation. Then she saw me. The color instantly vanished from her face. Reagan, she said, they told me I was just giving a witness statement. My voice was low and steady. Have a seat, Paige. She paused and looked toward the officer. He pointed to the chair across from me. Then he left and closed the door. Paige slowly sat down in the chair. Her gaze darted between me and the large mirror, then back to my face. What is going on? Should you not have a lawyer with you? I looked at her and said, This is not about me. Today is all about you. Paige laughed nervously. So, what did the detective tell you? He wants to find the truth, and I am here to make sure he does. Her eyes shot back to the mirror. I do not understand. You will soon enough. I opened a folder on the table. I took out the first piece of paper. It was a picture of her computer search history. I pushed it across the table to her. Paige, on August 20th, did you search for how to anonymously report a hit and run? She just stared at the page. All the color left her face again. That is from my computer. How did you get that? Just answer the question, Paige. Her mouth hung open slightly. I think I was looking that up for a client. As a wedding planner, I have to research strange things. I pushed another paper toward her. And what about this search? Do police check alibis of family members? Was that also for a client's wedding? Paige's fingers gripped the edge of the table. You went through my personal computer. That is illegal. I just looked at our shared family cloud account. As the administrator, I have legal access to everything. Paige's jaw tightened, but she remained silent. I leaned forward. Paige, did you steal my driver's license? She was quiet for a moment. No, why would I do that? Let us discuss July 12th. That was a Wednesday morning. You were at the Lifetime Fitness in Westlake. I was just visiting mom. She lives right near there. You were there because I go every Wednesday. You knew my routine. I slid a third paper over. It was a gym log. It showed we both signed in just 15 minutes apart. I had to take a work call, so my locker was unlocked for 5 minutes. When I returned, my license was missing. Paige looked at the gym record. That proves absolutely nothing. Paige, where is your driver's license? Her hand started moving toward her purse. I warned her, Do not bother. I know you have your license because the one found in the Range Rover was mine. Paige's hand stopped moving. She grabbed her purse tightly. Her fingers were shaking. For the first time, she looked truly scared. This cannot be happening, Reagan. You are setting me up. I am your sister, are you? I interrupted her. My voice was low but sharp. A real sister would not spend 3 months plotting to send me to prison. Paige went still. What are you even talking about? I reached into the folder a final time. I pulled out her journal. I had printed all 90 days of entries. The dates and important sections were highlighted. I placed the pages on the table one by one. It felt like a gambler revealing a perfect hand. Paige's eyes grew wide in complete shock. What is all of that? Let me read you a little story, Paige. It is called Day 1, My Plan to Ruin My Sister. I picked up the first page and began to read aloud. Day 1, June 18th. We had dinner tonight. Dad would not stop bragging about Reagan's new promotion, $78,000 a year. Reagan, the director at 33. It was Reagan this and Reagan that. I am so tired of hearing her name. I manage events worth millions, but Dad treats me like I do not have a job. I am finished with being second best. My sister Paige thought her plan was absolutely perfect, but she never saw this coming. Her first step was to get my driver's license. After that, she looked for the ideal victim. She needed someone who would make the police so furious they would not bother checking for an alibi. Paige just shook her head. Stop, she said. Where did you get that? I told her it came from her journal. Day 28, July 11th. Reagan visits the gym in Westlake every Wednesday. She is so easy to predict. I will just show up there tomorrow. I will steal her license from her locker while she showers. I looked up from the page. You saw me that day, Paige. You gave me a hug. You told me you missed me, and then you stole my license. I did not, she pleaded. Day 35, July 18th. It worked. I have Reagan's license in my hand. She still has not realized it is missing. She is so unaware. My voice trembled on the last word, but I pushed forward. Day 47, July 30th. I found the target. Detective Robert Fisher's wife, Jennifer. She is a pediatric nurse, the most innocent victim I could find. And this is the best part. When a police officer's family is harmed, the whole department gets emotional. They will arrest the person whose ID is at the crime scene and figure out the rest later. Reagan will have no time to prove she is innocent. Paige was breathing heavily. You hacked into my private journal. That will never be allowed in a courtroom. Day 75, September 2nd. I did a practice run last night. I drove Dad's Range Rover while drunk through the intersection at 9:15. I saw no police cars, no cameras. The timing is perfect. I set the page down and stared at her. You practiced, Paige. You drove drunk on purpose to make sure you could pull it off. Tears were now running down her face, but I was not finished. Day 82, September 9th. I told Mom about my plan. She was against it at first, but Dad changed her mind. He told her this would teach Reagan a lesson in humility. Mom then agreed to make the anonymous 911 call herself. Paige's voice was breaking. Reagan, please stop reading this. Day 89, September 16th. Tomorrow is the big night. I have everything prepared. I will crash into Jennifer's car at about 9:17. I will leave Reagan's license on the front seat. Mom will call 911 with an anonymous report. By the next morning, Reagan will be sitting in a jail cell. She will lose her job, her good name, and her freedom. She will finally understand what it feels like to have nothing left, and I will be the favorite daughter. Goodbye, my dear sister. I placed the last page on the table. The only sound in the room was the sound of Paige's harsh breathing. She stared at the pages in front of her, her hands shaking. I can explain, she whispered. Can you really? I leaned back in my chair. Because I am listening, Paige. Explain how you spent 90 days planning to destroy my life. Explain how you stalked Jennifer Fisher. Explain how you practiced driving drunk to hit her car at the right moment. Explain why you picked a detective's wife. You knew the police would be too angry to look at my alibi. Paige opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. On the other side of the one-way mirror, I knew Bradley was there, recording every sound, every facial expression, every lie Paige had told, and every truth she was about to tell. Go ahead, I said quietly. Tell me what you did. Before Paige confesses, what do you think she will say? Is she guilty? In just 60 seconds, she is going to shatter. The journal, the internet searches, the lies, it is all about to come out. And the next words, she yells at me, I wanted you to suffer, will seal her fate in court. Please know, this story is a work of fiction and created for entertainment. Any similarity to actual people or events is a coincidence. But if you want to witness the moment my sister's anger destroys her, do not go anywhere. This is the confession that changes everything. Paige's mouth opened, then it closed. Then it opened one more time. I did not do it. Her voice was weak. Her hands were shaking. You do not understand what those searches were for. I was doing research for a blog I write on true crime stories. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Paige, my voice was completely steady. The journal. Tell me about your journal. Her expression started to crumble. You looked at my private files. That is illegal, Reagan. You cannot use that against me in court. It is a shared family computer account, I replied. It is completely legal. I am the one who set up the account. I have had access for the last 5 years. You agreed to the terms when Mom created it, but those are just my private thoughts. Her voice became louder and more frantic. You cannot use those. They were just ideas I never actually did. I slid the last piece of proof across the table. It was a police photograph of the Range Rover from the accident, a black luxury car. The entire front was completely smashed. The airbags were deployed. This car is registered to Dad's investment firm. You have permission to use it. The accident occurred at 9:17 in the evening. My work video call was recorded from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock. I was not the driver. I looked her right in the eyes. But you were. Paige stared at the photo, and her breathing grew short and rapid. She shot up from her chair, which made a loud scraping sound on the floor. You think you are so clever. Her voice was now sharp and hateful. I did not even move. Paige slammed both of her hands down on the table. You were always the perfect daughter. It was always about Reagan this and Reagan that, Reagan's amazing grades, Reagan's wonderful job, Reagan's perfect life. So you wanted to ruin it? I asked her softly. Yes! She screamed as tears cut paths through her makeup. I wanted you to be in pain. I wanted you to finally know what it feels like to lose it all, to be a nobody. I leaned in just a little. Did you pick Jennifer Fisher for a specific reason? Paige's laugh was manic and frightening. I did not care if that detective's wife lived or died. She was just a small, unfortunate detail in the plan. This was always about you, about making you pay for being so much better than me. The room fell silent. Paige was out of breath, her chest heaving up and down. I kept my voice level. So you admit it. You caused the accident. You planted my license there. You attempted to frame me for the whole thing. The color drained from Paige's face. She understood what she had just done. Wait, no, that is not what I meant. I knocked on the one-way mirror twice. The door opened right away. Detective Bradley entered the room, holding a pair of handcuffs. Paige backed away from the table. No, please, you have to wait. Bradley's voice was firm and professional. Paige Sutton, you are under arrest for the crime of attempted murder and for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit a felony, and obstruction of justice. He walked to stand behind her. She looked at me, her eyes filled with terror. Reagan, you have to help me. I am your sister. Bradley secured her hands behind her back. The metal of the handcuffs made a sharp clicking sound. I stood up, walked over to her, and looked directly into her eyes. You stopped being my sister 90 days ago. Bradley read her legal rights to her as he guided her out of the room. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The detective read my sister her rights while she screamed my name. Reagan, Reagan, I am so sorry. And then the door shut, leaving me alone in the silent room. All the evidence was laid out in front of me. The photo of the car, the search history, the gym schedule. It took me 3 whole days to find it all, 3 days to put together a case that would ruin my sister's life, just as she had tried to ruin mine. I expected to feel happy, but I only felt empty. I would soon learn the horrible truth. My sister had done something like this once before, and the victim was still suffering. The door opened again, and Detective Bradley walked back in. He looked completely exhausted. He told me that I had done a very good job. He said her confession was very clear and would be presented in court. I just nodded my head. I was unable to speak. Bradley sat in the chair across from me. He explained that Paige was a flight risk and a danger to the community, so she would be denied bail. The district attorney would press charges for attempted murder, assault, and several other felonies. She was facing at least 20 years in prison. I finally managed to ask about my parents. He informed me they were being brought in for questioning that same afternoon. My mother was the person who made the false emergency call, and my father helped her plan it. Cell phone records proved my mother was 8 miles from the crash site at 9:24 that night. She placed the call from the West Lake area just as I had suspected. I shut my eyes tightly. Bradley continued, explaining that Jennifer, the wife of the man my sister had targeted, was in stable condition and would recover. Her daughter Emma had a concussion but would be all right. Both of them were prepared to testify against Paige. He paused and then looked directly at me. You saved their lives, Reagan. Paige never would have given up. People like her do not know how to stop. I looked back at him. She will not stop now, even from a prison cell. Bradley's expression became very serious. Then we will work as hard as we can to make sure she stays there for a very long time. As he stood up to leave, he turned back around. He said that when they investigated Paige's background, something interesting appeared. An old case from 2 years ago involving a woman named Rachel Murphy. She was accused of stealing $85,000 from her employer. One false claim had cost her everything. She lost her job, her good name, and her entire future. Now she worked 3 low-wage jobs just to get by. A terrible feeling twisted in my stomach. I asked what any of that had to do with my sister. Bradley told me Rachel and Paige used to be co-workers. The evidence used against Rachel was a complete fake. Someone had planted it. And the person who pretended to find the crime was my sister, Paige. The room began to feel like it was swaying. Paige had framed her. He confirmed that was what they believed. Rachel had always claimed she was innocent, but the case went nowhere. Bradley placed a business card on the table. It had the name Rachel Murphy printed on it. She lived in East Austin and worked in a coffee shop. He said I should go and have a talk with her. The second he left, I grabbed the card. 2 years ago, my sister had destroyed this woman's life. While she spent 90 days planning my ruin, she had already practiced on someone else. By noon, Paige was in a jail cell. By 1 in the afternoon, my parents were at the police station. By 2, I was back in my apartment looking at the evidence I was never supposed to find. Bradley had called me 30 minutes before. He informed me my parents had hired a lawyer for all of them. That attorney was already trying to get Paige's confession thrown out. I told him she gave it freely. He said the lawyer would fight it regardless. Then Bradley mentioned something new. He spoke about the old case from 2 years ago that involved Rachel Murphy. He was certain I should look into it. If Paige had done this before, it showed a clear pattern of conduct. It would prove she was a predator, not a one-time offender. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. Bradley's words replayed in my mind. People like her do not start with something this big. They build up to it. I went into our family's shared cloud storage and scrolled back in time, past 2023, deep into 2022, and that is when I saw it. An old backup from an iPad dated June of 2022. When I opened it, I saw photos, notes, and a folder named Private Journal. My stomach dropped. There was another one. The folder contained 30 entries. I began to read. The first entry was from June 18th. It said everyone at work loved Rachel Murphy and her amazing designs, and Paige was tired of it. She wrote that Rachel had to be removed. I kept scrolling. An entry from June 25th said she had a scheme to get rid of Rachel by framing her for stealing company funds. On July 20th, she wrote that she had taken Rachel's password when she left her desk unlocked. The final journal entry was from August 15th. Paige wrote that this was the day she would ruin Rachel. Her plan was to shift $85,000 from a client account to a secret one, using Rachel's personal login. She was sure Rachel would get fired, or maybe even arrested. After that, Paige would finally become the lead coordinator. I felt physically ill. She had taken apart this woman's life 2 years before she tried to do it to me. I quickly searched for Rachel Murphy online. An article from August 17th, 2022 was the top result. It said an event manager named Rachel Murphy was accused of stealing $85,000. The article stated the proof against the 28-year-old was overwhelming, but Murphy insisted she was innocent and was being framed. A later article from November reported the charges were dropped because of problems with the digital evidence, but the harm was done. Rachel Murphy's career was destroyed. She could not find another job in her field. I found Rachel's professional page on the internet. Her picture showed a smiling, confident woman, but her summary told a different story. It just said she was seeking new opportunities. Her last position ended in August of 2022. Her resume showed a 2-year employment gap. She had posted looking for any kind of work, but the last post was from 6 months ago. After that, there was silence. A public records search provided her current address. It was a tiny studio in East Austin, the kind of place you rent for about $800 a month. It was the apartment you get when your life has fallen apart. Paige had methodically destroyed this woman with a cruel and careful plan. And for 2 years, Rachel had no idea who was truly behind her pain. I called Bradley immediately. I have the proof. I told him Paige had done the exact same thing to Rachel Murphy 2 years ago. He told me to send everything to him. Showing this pattern would make the case against Paige much stronger. It would demonstrate her actions were planned and that she would likely do it again. I had to find Rachel. She deserved to know who was behind her ruin. Bradley urged me to be careful. I told him that if Paige framed her, Rachel would want justice just as much as I did. After we hung up, I grabbed my keys and drove. The apartment building was neglected, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman in Rachel's old photos. At 6 o'clock that evening, I knocked on door 2B. I heard shuffling inside before the door opened slightly, stopped by a chain. A tired, rail-thin woman looked out. Her eyes had deep, dark circles, making her look much older than 30. She asked me what I wanted. My name is Reagan Sutton, I explained. 2 years ago, my sister Paige destroyed your life. 3 days ago, she attempted to do the same to me. I believe we need to talk. Rachel unlatched the chain and let me in. Her apartment was tiny, perhaps 400 square feet, but it was spotless. This was a place for survival, not for living. A futon served as both her couch and bed. A single hot plate and a mini fridge were her entire kitchen. She had no television, only a laptop on a small table beside a stack of bills. Rachel gestured for me to sit on the futon. She started to offer me coffee, but then stopped herself. We both knew it was a luxury she could not afford. I sat down while she stood, watching me with suspicion. You mentioned your sister ruined my life. Paige Sutton, I remember that name. We were co-workers at Premier Austin events 2 years ago. I know, I said, you have to see this. I opened the 2022 journal file on my laptop and angled the screen toward her. This is Paige's personal journal from June through August of that year. She documented everything. Rachel's hands shook as she started to scroll, all the color drained from her face. On day 1, she wrote about me. Rachel Murphy acts like she is so much better than the rest of us. She continued reading. Day 15, I have a plan to get Rachel fired. Day 25, I have Rachel's laptop password. Her voice trembled. Day 30, I am going to use Rachel's login to move $85,000. Oh my goodness, she documented every single step. She planned this whole thing, just like she planned what she did to me, I said softly. Rachel sank onto the futon next to me, her eyes fixed on the screen. I told everyone it was not me, my boss, the police, even my own parents. Nobody would believe me. She looked up at me, tears rolling down her cheeks. How could they? The evidence against me was flawless. My login, the transfer history, my password, my computer. I believe you, I told her. Rachel gasped. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Tell me everything that happened, I said. The entire story. Rachel took a long, deep breath. 2 years ago, I was an event manager at Premier Austin events. I was very good at my work. In just 1 quarter, I landed 3 huge clients for weddings and corporate parties. My boss was considering me for a promotion to senior manager. She paused. Paige started working there 6 months after I did. She was friendly at first, but then she became incredibly competitive. Every new client I signed, she tried to steal. Every idea I presented, she would criticize in front of our bosses. She turned everything into a competition I wanted no part of. Rachel's jaw clenched. Then, in August of 2022, $85,000 went missing from a client account. Every digital footprint led straight to my login. The funds were sent to a foreign account I did not even know existed. I was dismissed that very day. The company pressed criminal charges against me. I used up all my savings to hire a lawyer. What was the result of the case? I asked. The evidence was just too strong, Rachel explained. My lawyer got the district attorney to drop the charges if I paid back the money and quit, but my career was over. Every event planner in Austin knew about it. The accusation appeared on every background check. I submitted 200 applications. I received 2 interviews and 0 job offers. She gestured at the small apartment. For 2 years, I have been delivering food just to pay for this room. My parents cut me off. They said I brought shame to our family. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I lost it all. My job, my money, my family, all because of Paige. I recognized in her the same person I was just 3 days before, accused, under arrest, and completely alone. But Rachel had no method to prove she was innocent. She had lived with the fallout for 2 years while Paige simply found her next victim. Me. Rachel, I told her, I have proof that it was Paige. Her confession is right here in this journal, and because of what she did to me, we can have your case reopened. Rachel's eyes grew wide. Reopen it now, after so much time has passed. It demonstrates a pattern of behavior, I explained. Paige set you up in 2022. She tried to set me up in 2024. Her technique is the same: steal an identity, commit a crime, plant the evidence, ruin the person. When we present this pattern to the district attorney, they will realize she is a serial offender. She is a predator. Rachel was stunned into silence. If we can prove she did this, can I have my life back? I am not certain, I answered honestly, but we have no choice but to try. Rachel was quiet for a few moments. Then she buried her face in her hands. When she looked up again, her entire expression had changed. The weariness was still there, but a new feeling had emerged. It was determination. What is it you need from me? She asked. Be at the police station tomorrow morning, I said. You will give an official statement. Tell them what occurred in 2022. I will supply the journal. Detective Bradley is handling my case. He will hear your side and see how it aligns with Paige's confession. Do you think they will believe me this time? Rachel asked. Her voice was a delicate mix of hope and fear. They will believe you, I promised. It is different this time because Paige has already admitted to framing another person. No one can say you are inventing a wild story. You are victim number 2 in her criminal pattern. Rachel nodded her head slowly. Okay, I will be there. There is something else, I added. When we go public, Paige's attorneys will attack you. They will claim you are lying for revenge or trying to benefit from my case. They will attempt to destroy what is left of your reputation. Rachel's jaw became firm. Let them try. I have carried this shame for 2 very long years. This time, I am going to fight. I got to my feet and offered her my hand. We will handle this together. Rachel stood up and grasped my hand. Her grip was strong. Together. After I left her building, I was walking to my car when my phone vibrated. It was Detective Bradley. Reagan, we have a problem. Wallace and Margaret posted Paige's bail. It was $500,000. She is out. My heart sank. When did that happen? About 20 minutes ago. Her lawyer claimed she was not a flight risk and had strong ties to the community. I remembered a sentence from Paige's journal, day 90. Even if Reagan thinks it was me, she has no evidence. But Paige was not aware that I possessed her journal. She was not aware that I had found Rachel, and she had no idea what was about to happen. Bradley, I said, please ensure Rachel Murphy comes in tomorrow, and I need to speak with the district attorney. We are not charging Paige with 1 crime, we are charging her with 2. We are going to establish that she is a repeat offender. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of police interviews, reviewing evidence, and observing the prosecutor construct a case designed to put Paige in prison. On Friday morning, September 20th, Rachel and I were seated opposite Detective Bradley and District Attorney Patricia Monroe. We were in a conference room at the Travis County District Attorney's office. Monroe was 58, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and intelligent gray eyes that saw everything. She had overseen major prosecutions in Austin for 20 years. Bradley had told me she was tough. That was good. We needed someone who was tough. Rachel retold her story, providing every last detail: the jealousy, the stolen password, the $85,000 that vanished, and the fake digital evidence planted throughout her life, including login histories, money transfers, and phony invoices, all of it done by Paige. Her voice was even, but I could see her hands trembling in her lap. She spoke of the day she was let go, the day officers arrived at her home, and the day her parents said she was no longer their daughter. Monroe listened to her without interruption. She took no notes. She showed no emotion. She simply observed Rachel with the detached, clinical eye of a prosecutor, figuring out the best way to present this to a jury. When Rachel was done, Monroe shifted back in her chair. The leather groaned softly in the quiet room. Why did you not claim you were framed back then? Rachel's voice was firm, but her hands were still shaking. I did. No one would listen to me. The proof was just too powerful to ignore. I slid the 2022 journal across the table to her. This explains everything. Monroe read the pages without a word. Her expression was unreadable, but I saw the muscle in her jaw tighten. Her eyes scanned the page, taking in every single calculated move Paige had planned. When she looked up, her gaze was like ice. This was planned from the start. Mrs. Murphy, your case is being reopened. Rachel gasped and tears started streaming down her face. Thank you. Monroe offered no smile. She just closed the journal and handed it back to me. We will need the original book and any digital evidence you have. On Saturday, September 21st, the district attorney set up a central office for the case. A massive whiteboard covered one wall. It had two timelines, one in blue and one in red. For 2022 and Rachel Murphy, June, the jealousy starts. July, she steals the password. August, $85,000 are stolen and Rachel is framed. For 2024 and Reagan Sutton, June, the jealousy starts. July, she steals the driver's license. September, attempted murder, and Reagan is framed. Monroe stood before the board with her arms crossed. It is the exact same pattern. This is her signature. Bradley nodded. We can prosecute her for a pattern of criminal acts. The punishment will be far more severe. I want everything, Monroe declared. Every journal entry, every bank statement, and every witness you can find. I opened my laptop and showed them all the proof I had found over the week. There were two journals, one from 2022 and one from 2024. They showed 90 days of my sister's planning against me and 30 days against Rachel. I showed them the money trail with Bitcoin receipts, payments for fake IDs, and money sent to Rachel's accounts overseas. The digital evidence was just as strong, showing browser histories, deleted text messages, cloud documents, and login times. I also gave them a list of witnesses. It had Rachel Murphy and Jennifer Fisher once she recovered enough to talk. Emma Fisher's name was on it for a child-friendly statement about the car crash. I even put down Officer Kyle Stevens, the officer who arrested me. The Uber driver who saw the Range Rover leave the scene was on the list too. Monroe's assistant was a sharp young man named Vincent Shaw. He took notes on a legal pad. He seemed to be about 30 years old in a perfectly tailored suit that matched his intelligent look. He stayed quiet, but I could see him building the story for a jury in his head. After I was done, Monroe looked at Bradley. How strong is the confession from 2024? It is rock solid, Bradley promised. She confessed on her own without any pressure. Paige just broke down during the interview. She admitted to everything on camera. She actually said, I wanted her to be in pain. I did not care if the officer's wife died. A tiny smile appeared on Monroe's face. Perfect. We are going to make her pay for this. On Sunday, September 22nd, Monroe called us into her office again. Rachel sat with me, and Bradley stood by the door. Monroe had a thick folder on her desk. She opened it. Here is the official list of charges against Paige Sutton. Then she began to read them. For the crimes in 2024, she is charged with 2 counts of attempted murder against Jennifer Pfizer and Emma Pfizer. The charges were a list of serious felonies: aggravated assault with a dangerous weapon, leaving the scene of an accident, endangering a child. There was also identity theft and obstructing justice. Monroe turned the page. The crimes from 2022 were just as bad: embezzlement of $85,000, wire fraud, stealing the identity of Rachel Murphy, and computer fraud. She went to another page. We also added charges for engaging in organized criminal activity. Monroe finally looked up at me. With everything here, Paige is facing 25 to 30 years in state prison. She will not be eligible for parole for at least 15 years. The reality of that sentence filled the room. If Paige ever came out, she would be in her 50s. The air felt heavy, and I heard Rachel take a sharp breath beside me. What will happen to my parents? I asked, my own voice sounding strange and far away. Monroe's professional look softened just a little. Wallace and Margaret will have their own charges, she explained. They are facing conspiracy, filing a false police report, and making a fake 911 call. If they choose to testify against Paige, they could get probation. And if they do not, she paused. Then they could each get 2 to 5 years. I nodded slowly. They made their bed. Monroe closed the file. The arraignment is Monday at 9 in the morning. Paige will enter her plea. I can assure you she will plead not guilty. After that meeting, we began getting ready for the trial. Monroe looked at both of us. I am going to need you both to testify. Rachel and I looked at each other, and she gave a determined nod. We will be there. When we walked out of the district attorney's building, the afternoon heat hit us like a wall. The temperature in Austin was still 95 degrees, and you could see the heat rising from the pavement. The air was thick with the smell of hot tar and exhaust fumes. Rachel and I walked to the parking garage without saying a word. We were silent until we got to my car. She finally turned to me. Reagan, she said, her voice full of emotion, I need to thank you for believing me, for fighting for me. I looked at this woman whose life my sister had tried to ruin. In that moment, something changed inside me. This was no longer just about clearing my name. It was about making sure Paige never had the chance to destroy another person. It is not over yet, I said to her. Paige is going to plead not guilty on Monday. That is when the hard part begins. Rachel nodded. I am ready. But I did not share my biggest fear. I was terrified because Paige was out on bail. She knew that I was the one who had turned her in. She knew about the journals, about Rachel, and about the whole case against her. Paige Sutton had nothing left to lose, and a person who has nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind of person. I remembered what she had written on day 90. She has no proof, but that was not true anymore. And Paige knew that I had it all. That meant she would either run or she would come for me, and I did not know which was worse. On Monday morning, September 25th, I found a seat in the public gallery of the Travis County Courthouse. I was there to watch my sister plead not guilty to 14 different criminal charges. The courtroom was full. The news reporters were in the back rows, writing quickly in their notebooks. On the prosecutor's side, I could see Jennifer Fisher's family. My own parents sat right behind Paige with their lawyer between them, but I sat all by myself. Paige came into the room wearing a nice cream-colored dress and heels, not a jail jumpsuit. She was still a free woman. The judge was a serious woman in her 60s named Catherine Walsh, and she looked down from her high bench. Paige Sutton, you are charged with 14 counts, she began. 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, felony hit and run, child endangerment, identity theft, and obstruction of justice. The list went on and on: embezzlement, wire fraud, computer fraud, and stealing Rachel Murphy's identity, and to top it off, organized criminal activity. It took a full 30 seconds for her to read everything. Every charge felt like a blow to my stomach. How do you plead? Paige's voice was steady and loud. Not guilty, Your Honor. A cold wave of dread washed over me. She was going to fight this with everything she had. District Attorney Monroe stood up. Your Honor, the state would like to revoke her bail. The defendant is a clear threat to the witnesses, especially her sister, Reagan Sutton. A man named Gregory Palmer rose to his feet. Your Honor, my client has followed all the rules of her bail. She is not going to run. She is a respected person in this community and has never been in trouble before this. Judge Walsh looked at Paige for a long moment. Bail will be continued, but Miss Sutton, you are ordered to have no contact with Reagan Sutton or Rachel Murphy. If you violate this order, you will go directly to jail. Is that understood? Yes, Your Honor. The trial date will be December 2nd, 2024. Court is adjourned. The judge's gavel came down with a loud crack. I stood and tried to disappear into the crowd leaving the room, but in the hall I came face to face with them. Paige, Wallace, and Margaret were talking with their lawyer, already planning their next move. Wallace saw me and started walking my way. Reagan, we must talk about this as a family. I kept walking. I have nothing to say to you. My mother's voice was shaking. Please, honey, Paige made a mistake. She is your sister. That stopped me in my tracks. I turned to look at them all. She tried to frame me for a crime that could have put me in prison for 10 years. That is not an error. That is a deliberate act of evil. Paige came closer, her eyes hard and emotionless. You are going to regret this, Reagan. You are the one who is destroying this family. I did not destroy it, I said, my voice just a whisper. You did, 90 days ago. A sheriff's deputy stepped between us. Miss Sutton, you need to respect the no contact order. You have to step back right now. Paige stared at me for one more second, then she turned and left with our parents. I stood in the marble hallway watching them go. At that moment, I understood I would never see them as my family again. The next 3 weeks were a dizzying rush of trial preparation. The first week I spent every day with Monroe's team. They coached me on how to act on the witness stand. Only answer the question you are asked. Do not offer extra details. The defense will call you a vengeful person, so you must keep your cool. We reviewed the evidence for hours. We listened to my recording from the night of the crime. We examined the journal pages, which were now covered in highlights and notes. We followed the financial trail of every dollar Paige had taken. It was every single piece of the puzzle I had worked to put together. Then, in the second week, Jennifer Fisher was released from the hospital. 6 weeks after the collision, she could finally walk and speak well enough to testify. Monroe arranged for us to meet. In person, Jennifer looked much smaller than in her photos. She had a sling on her left arm, but her gaze was sharp and focused. Thank you, she said quietly, for discovering the truth about what happened. I did not know what to say. I am so deeply sorry that you and your daughter had to experience this. It was not your fault. She reached out with her good hand and gave mine a gentle squeeze. You stopped her. That is what matters. Her daughter, Emma Fisher, who was just 7 years old, was still too affected by the trauma to be in court. To shield Emma, Monroe had her deposition recorded on video. She sat in a cozy room, and a trauma expert asked her questions in a soft voice. I was only able to watch that recording one time. I saw that little girl describe the crash, the airbag, and her mother's cries. I could not watch it a second time. In the third week, Palmer began to file motions to exclude evidence. First, he claimed the journals were an invasion of privacy. Judge Walsh denied it, saying my access to the family cloud was legal. Next, he tried to get all the iCloud evidence dismissed. That motion was denied as well. After that, Rachel gave her deposition. I watched from behind a one-way mirror as she told her story with a calm and steady voice. She remembered the events of 2022 perfectly. Palmer's assistant grilled her for 2 hours, looking for any weakness in her account, but she never wavered. On October 15th, Monroe scheduled our final meeting before the trial began. She warned me I could be on the witness stand for 4 to 6 hours. Palmer is going to attack your character. He is going to say you invented the journals out of jealousy. You have to remain completely calm. I promised her I would. He will portray your access to the cloud account as illegal hacking. We both know that is a lie, but his goal is to plant doubt in the jury's mind. You need to be an unbreakable rock. I nodded in agreement. Monroe settled back into her chair. Reagan, for 20 years I have put people like her behind bars. In all my career, I have never seen a criminal document their crimes like this. Most try to hide what they did. Paige wrote about her actions like she was proud of them. This gives us our greatest advantage. Her own words are going to convict her. What if the jury doubts the journals are authentic? That is when we play her video confession for them. We have Paige on camera admitting she wanted me to suffer. She confessed she did not care if the other crash victim died. You simply cannot fake that kind of raw hatred. Monroe stood up. Try to get some rest. The trial starts Monday, December 2nd at 9 a.m. We are going to make sure she never hurts anyone again. The night before the trial, I could not sleep at all. I stared at the city lights, thinking of Paige's arrogant expression. She truly believed she would walk away free. Palmer's plan was clear. He would tear down my reputation and frame me as a vengeful sister who faked everything. But there was one key piece of evidence he could not possibly explain away. It was the undeniable sound of Paige's voice in that video confession. I had watched that video over and over to prepare myself for seeing it in court. Every time I heard Paige scream that she wanted me to suffer, my resolve became even stronger. Tomorrow, 12 strangers would hear that same confession. They would see her handwritten journals. They would hear Jennifer Fisher's testimony. They would listen as Rachel Murphy described 2 years of misery. Then they would finally hear my side of the story about how I uncovered the truth piece by painful piece. My sister's entire future was on the line, a choice between 30 years in prison or complete freedom. The trial of Paige Sutton started on a cold Monday, December 2nd, 2024. Those 5 days felt like an eternity. The courtroom was filled to capacity each day. Journalists, victim supporters, and curious Austin locals packed the benches. I sat in the front row for the prosecution, with Rachel by my side. Across the aisle, our parents, Wallace and Margaret, sat behind Paige and her attorney. Our eyes never met, not for a single moment. Judge Catherine Walsh presided over the case, as stern as she was at the initial hearing. The jury consisted of 12 people. There were 7 women and 5 men, their ages ranging from their early 20s to their late 60s. These ordinary citizens now held my sister's fate. The district attorney Monroe stood to deliver his opening remarks. He described a story of deep jealousy, careful scheming, and total destruction. Paige Sutton spent 3 months framing her own sister for a crime she did not commit. 2 years earlier, she had already ruined another woman's life without a second thought. Monroe said this shows her pattern. She is a predator who targets successful women out of pure envy and destroys them with no remorse. The evidence will prove that Paige Sutton is guilty on all counts. Next, her lawyer Palmer rose, looking confident and professional. He argued this was a simple family dispute that had spiraled out of control. He claimed that Reagan Sutton, being a tech professional, had both the motive and the ability to fabricate digital evidence. He insisted I had hacked my sister's private accounts, invaded her privacy, and created this narrative to escape my own legal troubles. The defense will establish reasonable doubt, which is all that is required. If that doubt exists, you have to find her not guilty. On the second day, it was my turn on the witness stand. Monroe had me recount the whole timeline from my arrest and the missing license to the investigation and finding the journals. This direct testimony lasted for 4 hours. Then Palmer stood up to begin his cross examination. He asked, Miss Sutton, do you acknowledge reading your sister's private journal without her permission? I clarified that I accessed a shared family cloud account that I legally manage. He quickly replied, How convenient that you just happened to find evidence of your sister's crimes. I calmly stated the journals are in Page's own writing. Digital records confirm the date of each entry. I did not fabricate a single thing. He pushed back, You have a career in cybersecurity. You could have changed that data. I said I did not. He responded, But you were capable of it. I looked directly at the jury. I was capable, but I did not do it. The forensic analysis proves I am telling the truth. Palmer questioned me for a full hour, but he could not shake me. On day 3, it was Rachel's turn to speak. She told her story. The frame up in 2022, the password that was stolen, the $85,000. She described being broke and jobless for 2 long years. Her voice was steady the entire time. Palmer only questioned her for 30 minutes. He could not unsettle her either. Jennifer Fisher was the next to testify. She looked thinner and more quiet, but she was just as strong. She talked about the car crash, the terrible impact, and waking in a hospital. Her daughter had a concussion. Then she learned the crash was not an accident. I thought it was just an accident, she said, until I learned it was all planned. I was the target because my husband is a detective. My daughter and I were just in the way. Her voice cracked on the last word, and 2 people on the jury quickly wiped their eyes. Day 4 was for the confession video. Monroe stood up. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to show Exhibit 47, the interrogation of Paige Sutton from September 19, 2024. Palmer objected right away, saying the confession was forced. Judge Walsh overruled the objection. The defendant was not under arrest at that time. She was a witness being interviewed, so Miranda rights were not required. The confession is allowed. The lights in the courtroom went down. A big screen at the front of the room lit up. I saw Paige on the screen in that same interrogation room. The video started in the middle of our talk with my voice sounding calm and cold. Did you have a reason for targeting Jennifer Fisher? Paige's voice became loud with anger. I did not care if that police officer's wife died. She was just in my way. This was always about you. A heavy silence filled the courtroom. A woman on the jury gasped and covered her mouth. Another juror leaned back in his chair, his face showing pure disgust. As the video played on, Paige screamed, I wanted you to be in pain. I wanted you to know what it feels like to lose every single thing you love. Then you could see the moment she understood what she had just said. Her face turned completely pale. Wait, that is not what I was trying to say. The screen turned black. The lights came back on. Paige just looked down at the table, her hands shaking. She would not look at anybody. Palmer stood up, trying to fix the situation. Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional strain. The confession was not forced, Monroe argued back. Miss Sutton had that outburst all by herself. No one made her or threatened her. She said the truth, and the jury heard it from her own mouth. Judge Walsh gave a small nod. You may continue. On day 5, it was time for the final arguments. Monroe looked right at the jury. You have seen her journals, which lay out 90 days of careful planning. You have heard her say, I wanted her to suffer. You have seen all of the evidence. 2 women, 2 different setups, and 1 person did it all. Paige Sutton is guilty, and she needs to face the full penalty of the law. Palmer stood for his last chance. He talked about reasonable doubt. That is the only thing you need. Can you be totally certain those journals were not changed? That her confession was not pulled out of her? If you have any doubt at all, you must find her not guilty. The jury walked out of the room at 2:15 in the afternoon. Rachel and I waited in the hallway, the air thick with tension. Bradley came over and leaned against the wall with us. How long do you think it will take? Rachel whispered. It could be hours, but it could also be days. I did not have an answer for her. At 6:30 that evening, a court officer came out. The jury is back. They had decided in only 4 hours. We all went back to our seats inside the courtroom. Paige sat like a statue between her lawyers. Wallace and Margaret looked like they had aged 10 years in 5 days. Judge Walsh entered the room. We all stood up and then sat back down. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a man in his 50s with gray hair and glasses, stood up. Yes, we have, Your Honor. On the charge of the attempted murder of Jennifer Fisher, what do you find? Guilty. A small sob came from Margaret. The foreman kept reading down the list. Attempted murder of Emma Fisher, guilty. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, guilty. Felony hit and run, guilty. Child endangerment, guilty. Identity theft of Reagan Sutton, guilty. Obstruction of justice, guilty. He read all 14 charges. Each time he said the same word, guilty, guilty, guilty. Paige's expression completely fell apart. Her hands gripped the table so hard that her knuckles were white. Palmer put a hand on her shoulder, but she did not seem to notice. Judge Walsh's voice cut through the quiet room. Miss Sutton, you have been found guilty on all counts. This court will sentence you on December 20th in 2 weeks. Take the defendant into custody. Two deputies walked toward Paige. She stood up on shaky legs. They cuffed her hands behind her. As they led her to a side door, she turned and stared right at me. There was no more fight left in her eyes. There was only a deep emptiness. Her lips moved, forming words. The courtroom was too noisy for me to hear them, but I could read them perfectly. I hate you. I did not say anything back. There was nothing left to be said. The door clicked shut. Paige was gone. On December 20th, 2024, it was the day of sentencing. The courtroom felt colder this time, or maybe it was just the feeling that it was all over. 2 weeks had passed since the verdict. Paige was at the defendant's table wearing an orange jumpsuit with her hands in cuffs. The nice clothes were gone. Her act was finally over. Gregory Palmer sat next to her, but he had no more arguments to make. Judge Catherine Walsh looked down from her high bench. Before I give the sentence, this court is going to hear from the victims. Jennifer Fisher spoke first. Her voice was strong, but she held onto the podium with a tight grip. My daughter Emma is 7 years old. She wakes up screaming from nightmares every single night. The sound of a car horn makes her very scared. Paige Sutton did not just hit our car, she drove a wedge right through our family. My husband Robert is a detective. He's used to seeing the ugly side of life, but he was not ready to see his own family bleeding after a crash. Paige Sutton does not deserve any kindness because she showed none to us. Rachel Murphy came up next. She was much thinner than she was 9 months before, but she stood up straighter. 2 years ago, Paige Sutton ruined my career, my reputation, and my relationships with my family. She took my entire life away from me. I spent 2 years thinking I had done something to cause it, that I must have made a terrible mistake. But I was not wrong. Paige destroyed my life just because she was jealous. Your Honor, she needs to be stopped. If she is ever let out, she will do this to another person. Then it was my time to speak. I went to the podium and looked at Judge Walsh, not making eye contact with Paige. Paige is my own sister. I spent my life looking out for her, and she repaid that love by trying to put me in prison for 10 years. But this is not about me anymore. This is about making sure Paige can never destroy another life. Your Honor, I am asking that you give her the longest sentence possible. Judge Walsh looked directly at Paige. Miss Sutton, please stand up. Paige stood and her chains made a quiet rattling sound. The judge's voice was cold and strong. I have looked at all the evidence, every single report, and the statements from your victims. What you did was not a simple error. Your actions were calculated, carefully planned, and unbelievably cruel. You wrote down your 90-day plan to ruin your own sister in a journal, and before that, you ruined Rachel Murphy's life for the most minor reason, just simple jealousy. She took a short breath. You have shown absolutely no remorse for what you did. Your confession was not full of regret, it was full of rage. The law allows for tougher sentences when there is a clear history of criminal acts. I am going to use those tougher sentences right now. For the charges of attempted murder, I sentence you to 15 years for each victim, and those sentences will be served one after the other. For the embezzlement and fraud committed against Rachel Murphy, you are sentenced to an additional 8 years. When added to the other sentences, your total time is 30 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. You will not have a chance for parole for at least 15 years. Paige's legs gave out from under her. A sob broke from our mother, Margaret, in the gallery. Wallace just sat there, his face completely pale. Judge Walsh's gavel hit the wood with a final sharp sound. Bailiff, please take the defendant into custody. Two deputies took Paige by the arms and led her away. This time there was no final glance back, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not relief, not joy, only a profound emptiness. It was finally done. 9 months later, in September of 2025, my life was unrecognizable. It was incredibly better. I felt like my old self once more. I could see my own smile in the reflection of my new corner office at Secure Net Solutions. My new job title was Director of Cybersecurity Architecture with a salary of $230,000 a year, a significant increase from $178,000. I put last year's $52,000 bonus toward two important things. First, I set up a $100,000 fund for Emma Pfizer's college tuition and her ongoing therapy. Second, I made a payment of $214,000, which cleared all of Jennifer Fisher's remaining medical bills. She sent me a thank you card that I keep on my desk. It says I saved her family twice, first from Paige and then from a mountain of debt. Just a short distance away, Rachel Murphy has her own office now. I hired her 6 months ago to be our senior event coordinator, and her criminal record has been completely erased. The district attorney officially cleared her name the day after Paige was sentenced. Rachel has saved $25,000. She has a new apartment in South Congress and is reconnecting with her parents. Last week, she got a promotion to lead event strategist. She thought her career was ruined forever. I told her she deserved every bit of her success. Jennifer and Emma are recovering. Jennifer is back at Dell Children's Hospital. Emma's therapy is twice a week and her nightmares are fading. She is a second grader with new friends who smiles more often. 3 months ago, Robert Fisher called to thank me for everything. I just said I was glad they were safe. He said they were safe because of me. Wallace and Margaret pleaded guilty to obstructing justice. Each got 2 years probation, community service, and $80,000 fines. Their big Westlake house sold for $3.1 million. After paying lawyers over $600,000, they now live in a small North Austin condo. I see them once a year on Thanksgiving. It is always tense, formal, and very cold. We never speak about Paige. She is in a women's prison in Gatesville, Texas, about 2 hours away. 4 months ago, she sent a short letter with only 3 lines. It just said, I am sorry, I was wrong. The last line asked me to please write back. I threw the letter out. I did not feel any hate for her. I felt nothing, which is so much worse. Today, I am at a coffee shop on 2nd Street with Rachel. Warm September light is shining through the glass. Rachel is glowing about her new promotion to senior event strategist. I told her that she earned it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She said she never truly thanked me for believing in her, for saving her life. I replied that we saved each other. We lifted our coffee cups in a small toast. Rachel's phone buzzed with a reminder for a meeting in 20 minutes. I told her to go and that I would get the check. She hugged me and asked about dinner this week, and I said, of course. I stayed for a moment, just looking out at the city of Austin. Just 1 year ago, I was arrested for a crime I did not commit. My very own sister tried to destroy me, but she forgot something important. My name is Reagan Sutton. I solve problems for a living. The toughest problem I ever solved was my own family. My phone buzzed with an email from a new client. A logistics company in Dallas had a data security problem. I left cash on the table and walked into the bright September day. I was finally, truly free. I was not just free from the legal case, but from a family who never loved me. And for the first time in my life, I felt I was right where I belonged. For anyone listening, please take this to heart. I was lucky to have a mind that could find the truth, the strength to defend myself, and the courage to choose right over family. There were 3 different times I could have given up. First, after I found the journal entry. Second, after I saw Rachel's terrible pain. And third, when the confession video was played in the courtroom. But I kept going because some fights are worth risking everything. Looking back, I do not regret exposing Paige. I only regret not seeing the warning signs much earlier. Her jealousy was always there, under her need to be better. She always blamed others for her own mistakes. Betrayal from a family member is not like a big movie scene. It grows quietly, looking like normal sibling competition. Then one day, you are in handcuffs because your sister tried to ruin you. Please learn from my experience. Do not wait until you are framed for a crime to see that family revenge is not just a story, it is a real thing and it can destroy you. So, this is my advice. Always listen to your gut feeling. If a person in your family makes you feel small, jealous, or scared, you must set boundaries to protect yourself, even if it is family. Betrayal by someone you love is the deepest kind of pain. They know your passwords, your schedule, and all of your weaknesses. If they use that knowledge to hurt you, you may not get a chance to recover. I almost did not get one. This whole nightmare proved that sharing blood does not mean loyalty. It showed me that the people you would do anything for can be the ones who want to hurt you the most. So if this story has touched you, please leave your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Please share this video with anyone who needs to hear this message, and please subscribe. The future stories I share will go even deeper into the dark side of human nature. Thank you for listening until the very end. I also want to state that stories on this channel may include fictional parts for educational reasons. If this kind of content is not for you, please feel free to look at other videos. Please stay safe